Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 3:09 p.m. Yes, I'm late. Okay, 16th of May 2025. With that being said, what is going on here? What in the world is going on? James Comey, okay, former FBI director, takes down his Instagram post. Why would you post something that may be detrimental to the commander in chief, to the 47th president of the United States? He put on the beach, okay? He got seashells and he made 8647. You were a former FBI director. There's no way you would say you don't know what that means. This is a former FBI director, ladies and gentlemen, saying he doesn't know that people will take it that way. The man of your caliber, there's no way you don't know what 86 means, especially to say 8647. You could have just said 8632 or 8652 or whatever, but you said 8647 specifically. Specifically, you said 8647. So now, whatever comes, ladies and gentlemen, because enough is enough. Enough is enough. This man has had 2 attempts on his life, potentially 3, and now a former FBI director that he let go. Of course, President Trump let James Comey go in 2017. Is he still mad about it? So why would you say 8647? That's the thing I don't like about liberals, okay? Everything is always violence. There's never we could sit down dialogue. It's always violence. Why? James Comey. Here we go.
Former FBI Director James Comey is under investigation for a now deleted Instagram post. The Trump administration claims that it presented a threat against President Trump. The picture, it shows seashells arranged to read 8647. 86, a generally used term in the restaurant industry, especially to mean either an item isn't available or referring to getting rid of or tossing something out. Trump is the 47th president, of course. The Republican uproar on this was swift. The president's son, Don Trump Jr., posted this: "Just James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the Dem media worships." Comey denied the picture was a call for violence. He explained in another post that he saw the shells while walking on the beach and thought it was, quote, a political message, and adding, "I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence." Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says her agency and the Secret Service are now investigating.
Ellie, I've got to get your take on something that is happening tonight. If people aren't on Twitter, I mean, this is kind of blowing up around the MAGA world, and the president's aides have been posting about this nonstop, even though they're here on the trip. The former FBI director, James Comey, whom Trump fired, posted this and wrote, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." When you look at it, it says 8647. He took it down and said he didn't realize that some people associate those numbers 86 with violence. Obviously, 47 is a reference to Trump. But listen to what the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, just to give you a sense of what administration officials are saying, what she just said tonight.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do. Any other person with a position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be.
I mean, she says he should be behind bars. Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, others are saying that there should be investigations over this. Your legal take, Ellie?
That's ridiculous. I mean, look, I am no fan of Jim
Of
Comey.
course.
I've been very critical of a lot of the things he's done. I think posting this was extremely reckless, to use a phrase that he once used, and
Oh, for real?
stupid. He has acknowledged that. He took it down. He said, I should not have posted this. This is not criminal. This is not a criminally chargeable threat against the president. It's political speech. It's way too broad. It's stupid. It's reckless. It's not criminal. That's just hyperbole that you're hearing from the cabinet members there.
The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, says that former FBI Director James Comey should be put in jail for an Instagram post he shared. So take a look at this. In the now deleted photo that Comey posted, you can see a shell formation making out the numbers 86 and 47. Now, some claim the 86 could refer to getting rid of something, and the 47 could be referring to President Trump as the 47th president. But Comey says he didn't realize some people would associate violence with those numbers and that it never occurred to him.
That is a ridiculous and insane statement to make, certainly within this context, but especially coming from a guy who's the former director of the FBI. A guy who spent most of his career prosecuting mobsters and gangsters, people who know and execute other humans and use this exact lingo of 86.
Now, either way you look at it, the post has become a flashpoint in an already heated political environment. The group chat is back to discuss. This is me literally looking at stones in the sand now and trying to define some sort of motivation. Kristi Noem, Homeland Secretary, wrote on Twitter that the administration is investigating the threat and will respond appropriately. Kash Patel saying the current FBI will provide all necessary support. This feels like a lot, but I want you guys to check me.
2 weeks ago, I was in New Hampshire with J.B. Pritzker, and he called for mass demonstrations and said Republicans shouldn't know a moment's peace. I tweeted a video of that, and very quickly, people like Donald Trump Jr. and others said that this was calling for another assassination of the president. We're going a little bit far, it would seem like, with some of this stuff. On the other hand, the political rhetoric has obviously gotten more and more violent over time. Even Donald Trump, right? This was him last November. To get to me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news, and I don't mind that so much because I don't mind. There's a question of how much we're just putting these violent thoughts into
It's not that I think they're not violent, but I also think, like, Comey is probably the least effectual sort of political voice in the space right now for Democrats or Republicans. What is the threat here?
Well, I'm not a defender of James Comey by any chance. But what I will say is that it's easy for someone to find a boogeyman to be a distraction. Both Patel and the secretary have a need to have distractions to deal because of the challenges they're facing in their current roles. And so I think this is just one example of what they're willing to do. And quite frankly, I don't think Republicans need to lecture America about threats and violence because they have their history of that.
The reason that I think you saw the reaction among so many Republicans and conservatives is because of the assassination attempts on President Trump last year and the belief that those have not been fully investigated. We still have some unanswered questions, that there's a perception and a belief that many in the news media just simply didn't give it the attention because it was against Donald Trump versus someone else.
But the rocks in the sand, it feels goofy.
The whole thing is goofy. I don't know why Comey posted it to begin with.
Yeah, like it just.
When I worked at a restaurant as a waiter at one point, we would talk about 86ing the specials, right? Like, it's not always like shooting something. You can interpret it that way, and certainly with the assassination attempt there, it changes all of it. It's definitely trying to make this an issue.
Really? Really? That's what they're saying? James Comey doesn't even know. He didn't know what he was doing. I mean, is he going to go to jail for just an Instagram post that is literally right there saying 8647? Yeah, I know.
Well, new this morning, President Trump is accusing former FBI Director James Comey, who he had fired in his first administration, of threatening him. Comey posted a photo of seashells spelling out the numbers 8647, prompting swift backlash. Alabama GOP Senator Tommy Tuberville, for example, called the post beyond despicable and said James Comey must face consequences. Comey has since deleted the photo and posted a statement, quote, "I I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred.
So why? So wait. Why did you have to delete it if you think there was nothing wrong with your walk on the beach and then you saw some seashells and then you made 86 specifically, you made 8647. So why did you delete it if it was so perfect? Why did you have to delete it?
To me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down.
President Trump says this about Comey's explanation. Listen to this.
Exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he didn't.
Well, he apologized because he was hit. Look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen?
He is a.
What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing.
The U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says her department and the U.S. Secret Service are investigating an alleged threat made against Trump by Comey.
All right, let's bring in who we just saw there, John Miller, a chief CNN law enforcement analyst. You were also, John, the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism for the NYPD. So is this a case you would have investigated, John?
You know, this is the kind of case that might have come in. We had a threat management unit that was very busy dealing with threats in New York City. And we could take those cases either to state prosecutors or federal prosecutors. But the bar is very high for what is a threat versus what is a statement versus what is a message. And when you look at this as, you know, the 8647, is that a threat? You know, 86 comes from the land of bartenders when they said you can't drink here anymore because you're a bad customer. Where it turned into killing, that may be some social media phenomenon, but it doesn't fit the legal standard of a threat that we would have taken on or that a federal prosecutor would have accepted.
John, given your law enforcement and intelligence experience, and it's very in-depth, what is the law regarding what constitutes a threat versus a political statement?
All right, so you would approach this from the federal statute because they've referred it to the Attorney General, the Secret Service, the FBI, the federal statute about making a threat against a government official through interstate commerce, meaning that they use the internet and social media. Then the bar is set at, is the threat a serious threat? Is it a credible threat? Did the person making the threat mean it and have the capability to carry it out? Is it the kind of threat that struck fear into the heart of the person being threatened? None of this seems to approach this bar. If I had brought this into the Southern District of New York as a threat, they would have said, we appreciate you stopping by, but we don't see a prosecution here. So what you see is a lot of hyperbole. But as my colleague Jim Murphy pointed out on this morning's news call, there are still stickers saying 86 Biden, meaning 8646, that are being sold on eBay. There's no call to say that those are threats. There's no investigation into eBay for selling them. They're available across the internet on other platforms. They're on sale at a reduced rate because he's not president anymore. None of the distributors are being investigated. So the question here is how much of this is government weaponization theater versus a real legal problem?
And just to follow up with that, you know, whether or not he should have posted that is a different story. You know, in terms of the legal aspect of this, the fact that he deleted it and then said, look, I didn't realize that that meant violence. You know, I don't condone violence, so as a result, I took this down. How would that typically factor in an investigation?
You know, that's a great question, because when these cases rolled into us, either my people or the FBI and detectives from the Joint Terrorist Task Force would go out and do the interview. This is how you close out the case. what did you mean when you said it? Did you mean it when you said it? Typically, we had people who would threaten to kill politicians, and they would say, I was drunk, I was online, I don't know why I did it, I certainly have no intention of doing it, and the case would die right there.
All right, John Miller, thank you.
Okay, so this is a man who has had 2 assassination attempts on his life. Okay, one almost got him, where he was bleeding from his ear. He had to be rushed to the hospital. And these folks are sitting here saying that, we don't know. Look, it's not a serious threat. What are you talking about? This man was almost sent to heaven like 3 times. And now a former FBI director, it's not like some low-level agent. This is a former FBI director, ladies and gentlemen. A former FBI director definitely knows what 86 means. Tell you that much. So his point saying that they're selling 86 Biden or whatever on eBay, those are not the FBI director. Okay? Those people are just trying to make money. A former FBI director posting 8647, yeah, he's going to have to explain himself.
Thank you so much. A remarkable accusation from President Trump. He says former FBI Director James Comey insinuated a threat against him in a social media post that has since been deleted. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is also weighing in, saying Comey now faces federal investigations. Joining us now is Evan Perez, CNN senior justice correspondent. All right, tell us more about this post. How is Comey responding? Well, what's going on here, Evan?
What's going on is right. I mean, look, this is we put up the post from Jim Comey. He says he was walking along a beach and he saw shells that were arranged like this, 86 47. Now, 86 to 47 refers to, presumably, he says, it's a political message about President Trump, who's the 47th president of the United States, and 86 colloquially could be used to be a term that says remove or get rid of. Now, people on the right, the president's supporters, have taken this to mean that this was a threat, a direct threat to the President of the United States, an assassination threat. Obviously, the President has had 2 assassination threats, so people take these types of things very seriously. Kristi Noem says that it's now under investigation. You see other people, including Tommy Tuberville, saying this is a very serious matter. It's not clear that that this is what really this is, right? Jim Comey did respond to us. We reached out to him, and he referred us to a replacement post he put on social media in which he says, I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. And so now the question is, what does this become? Is this a real investigation? Clearly, he's saying that there was no threat, so that usually is the end of the story. But we don't live in those times right now.
We don't, and I mean, just think about the history between James Comey and Donald Trump,
Correct.
right? I mean, James Comey investigated him, Donald Trump fired him.
Question: what does 8647 actually mean? Somebody should sit him down and say, James Comey, when you post that 8647, what did you actually mean? Nobody's saying that. He better come on national TV news and say, you know what? When I posted 8647, it meant taking the president to go eat ice cream, right? Somebody has to tell us what 8647 actually mean. He said, I oppose violence. Okay, so when you posted 8647, what did you actually mean, sir? Tell us. What do you mean by 8647? If you didn't mean anything, so why did you take it down? Oh.
Correct.
I'm just curious, though, and I know he referred you to the post, but he said he assumed it was a political message.
Yeah, he did assume it was a political message. And look, I mean, just down the street at Union Station, there are people who have signs that say remove the president of the United States. So does 86 refer to removal in which way? I mean, that's the question. And I guess, again, if you're going to try to be a prosecutor to bring a case against Jim Comey for this, it's not clear you're going to go very far.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they're going very far.
Thank you so much.
They're going very far, I'll tell you that much. Because what does 8647 mean? What does he mean? Here we go.
A wave of anger. James Comey, our former FBI director, posted on Instagram something that many are interpreting as a call for violence on the president. Look at this. The caption reads, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." And it says 8647.
So this is what the former director is saying in response to this. It literally makes no sense, but here it is. I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assume were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associated those numbers with violence. It's never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. So what political message did you think it represented?
Just in case you don't know, most people do. In the dictionary, it defines 86 as slang for to throw out, to get rid of, and to refuse service to. A lot of restaurants use this. When I was a waitress, they would put 86 green beans on the chalkboard, so you knew we were out of it.
But like when it comes to law enforcement, a lot of times 86 means death.
That's
like,
right.
Kill him by 86 to him, he's dead. So we thought the head of the FBI has to know what 86 can be
100%.
used. Why would you post that? Number one, who cares what James Comey thinks? All he spends his time on the beach. I'm wondering, did he do that rock formation?
Right, I was wondering that too.
Or do you think he just
100%.
walked on and thought you'd share it? So this caused Don Jr. stumbled on it first and said, "Are you calling for the assassination of my dad?"
Yeah.
So here's the president responding to it.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he doesn't.
Well, he
wasn't
apologized
calling
because
for
he was
violence. But
look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing, and when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop, and if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency, but I'm going to let them make that decision.
Tulsi Gabbard was asked, do you believe that Comey should be in jail? She said, I do. Any other person with a position of influence that has people who take him very seriously with a guy of that stature, his experience, and with propaganda media has built him up to be. She's very concerned. So Secret Service is now dispatched to investigate.
And Don Jr. said, just James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the Dem media worships, demented.
We've already had 2 attempted assassination attempts on the president.
Why would you encourage that?
Why would you put that out there? And playing stupid is not going to get you anywhere. I look forward to the investigation.
I'm Steve Doocy.
Exactly. Because what are you thinking? The former FBI director saying 8647? Tulsi Gabbard, ladies and gentlemen.
Fox News alert. Homeland Security just launched an investigation into former FBI Director James Comey for threatening to 86 President Trump. Comey posted this picture of seashells spelling out 8647, claiming he just ran into him on the beach. Comey says he knew it was a political message, but didn't know what 86 meant. Tulsi Gabbard's the director of national intelligence. Are you buying that the former FBI director didn't know what 86 Trump meant?
Absolutely not, Jesse. That is a ridiculous and insane statement to make, certainly within this context, but especially coming from a guy who's the former director of the FBI, a guy who spent most of his career prosecuting mobsters and gangsters, people who know and execute other humans and use this exact lingo of 86. Comey himself admitted in his follow-on message that he knew that this was a political statement. Well, the only reason he knew that, Jesse, was because a little over a month ago, a bunch of anti-Trump, anti-Elon Musk protesters were proliferating the use of this 8647 slogan, which was a veiled call to action to murder the sitting president of the United States. So for Comey to think that we, the American people, are so stupid as to think that he, as a former FBI director, former prosecutor, and someone who clearly pays attention to what's going on, would believe his lie that he didn't know what this actually was calling for, The dangerousness of this, Jesse, cannot be underestimated. When we have 2 assassination attempts on the president's life, when we have people who look to guys like Comey, who've been celebrated by MSNBC and the Democrat elite and CNN as the beacon of integrity, the law and order guy, the guy who would tell the truth no matter what the consequences. This is the guy who's issuing a hit on President Trump, the president that the American people voted for. So it's guys like Comey and others who call the president the modern day Nazi, people who are in great positions of influence, who are saying that President Trump poses an existential threat to our country. These are people who hate democracy and hate the American people because they cannot stand that the people overwhelmingly chose to elect Donald Trump and send him back to the White House. So they are seeking other means to get their way and to try to remove him from that position.
How serious is the administration taking this, and what are the next steps going to be?
We're taking this very seriously. As you mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security, and specifically Sean Curran, the current Secret Service director, a man who has been willing to lay down his life as the lead of President Trump's Secret Service detail for years now. He takes this seriously and is leading the investigation into this threat. There has to be accountability for this. There was a Rutgers study that just came out a little over a month ago, Jesse, that asked respondents their view on these calls to assassinate President Trump. And over 55% of respondents felt that murdering President Trump would be, quote unquote, somewhat justified. This is the effect of people like James Comey doing this kind of stuff. This study also pointed out that there is a quote unquote assassination culture that is starting to take over the views of what they call the extreme left. We, the American people, cannot take this lightly. Whatever your politics, we cannot allow people to get by without being held accountable for this kind of public call to assassinate the President of the United States.
Do you believe that Comey is goading you guys to come after him because he wants to be a political martyr? He wants to be set up so he can say, oh, look, we were right. Donald Trump is a dictator. They're coming after me. They're arresting me. They're interrogating me. I was just using my free speech.
You know, whatever his intent, I will tell you that there is a guy in Georgia who is issuing threats on my life about a month ago, and he's in jail today. He has been indicted with a crime, as he should have been, and he is in jail as we speak. So whatever James Comey intent, he and people like him need to be held to account according to the law, which is something that he claims to have given his life for and stands by the rule of law. Fantastic. The rule of law says people like him who issue direct threats against the President of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do. Any other person with a position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be, I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
Director Gabbard.
What do you guys think about this? If former FBI director saying 8647, and he's here saying playing dumb. I don't know. I don't know what 8647 means. Really? If former FBI director, I get it. You don't like Trump. You don't like him. Okay. But why would you call for basically often the President of the United States or getting rid of President of the United States? And you're saying you don't know? Yeah, you're going to get investigated, bro.
Good morning, everybody. He's back in the headlines, back in the news for all the wrong reasons. And moments ago, President Trump responded. First, the former FBI Director James Comey accused of posting an online threat against the president, and the president giving his first reaction to Fox News. So that's where we begin today. We got questions. We'll get to them now. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to Friday. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. This is not the story I thought we would be covering on this Friday. So much has happened this week, but here's what happened last night. So Comey posted this picture on Instagram, and he wrote, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." So the shells read 8647. 86 is slang for get rid of. And President Trump is, of course, the 47th president of the United States.
So obviously not sitting well with the White House, especially in light of the president surviving 2 attempts on his life. Comey deleted the post. He took it down. He says he did not realize that some people associate the number 86 with violence. Who knew, right? From a former FBI director. So last hour overseas with Bret Baier, President Trump says he ain't buying it.
Exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country has become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he did.
Well, he apologized because he was hit. Look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen?
He is a.
What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing, and when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop, and if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency, but I'm going to let them make that decision.
Katie Pavlich and Noah Rothman are on deck, but first let's go to Rich Edson. He's in Washington, D.C. Hi, Rich. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Dana. Well, this isn't over for the former FBI director. A source with the United States Secret Service says officials will send agents to interview James Comey about this Instagram post. The director of national intelligence says the feds should arrest Comey.
The rule of law says people like him who issue direct threats against the President of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do. I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable.
Now, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff said it's deeply concerning to all of us being taken seriously. Yesterday, Comey shared on Instagram that post of what he called a shell formation on the beach, outlining the numbers 8647. 86 informally means to get rid of. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, you say 86 to strike an item from the menu. As for 47, this is for the 47th term for President Trump's 47th president, and one who has had 2 highly publicized attempts on his life last summer. Now, Comey deleted the post and then wrote, quote, I posted a picture earlier of some shells I saw on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associated those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. In his first term, President Trump fired Comey as FBI director. Comey had opened an investigation into the 2016 Trump campaign's Russian contacts. The White House said Trump fired Comey because he mishandled the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. Comey then wrote a book accusing Trump of unethical behavior. Dana, Bill, back to you.
All right, thank you so much.
So there's a lot to chew on here. We'll say hey to Katie and Noah, and good morning to both of you on a Friday morning. As Dana said, I didn't think we'd be covering this today, but here we is. All right. In January of 2024, op-ed James Comey said we should always worry about political violence, especially when violent rhetoric and behavior are embraced, even celebrated by one of our political parties and its leader. Noah, I don't know how you feel about it. Was he trying to joke, or was he trying to take a side shot, or was he just looking for attention?
I don't know. It's hard to put James Comey on the couch. I suspect the U.S. Secret Service will take a visit to him and gauge his mental state. I suspect they'll find what we all can see with our own eyes, a delusional old narcissist who spends way too much time attempting to curry favor online with the people he thinks are the cool kids. I suspect this is about as genuine a threat as the time Donald Trump said Liz Cheney had not faced fire in combat, and everybody pretended as though he had called for her to face a firing squad. That sort of scene-chewing theatrics is really good for your engagement, and I suspect that's exactly what James Comey was after, because that's what he's always after, attention. That being said, the online forums I'm sure he haunts are really into this sort of thing. They do want to see violence. They are impressionable. They are
to that point, his explanation was, I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence.
Well, I don't. I certainly didn't.
86?
But that doesn't, to me that's getting something off a menu. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's interpreted that way to everybody, and we are all responsible for what comes out of our mouths and the inadvertent consequences that could result from them. Everybody needs to take the temperature down. James Comey knows that, and he should have behaved more responsibly. All of us are responsible for this environment, and our responsibility is to keep it civil, calm, and measured.
Food servers everywhere know exactly what it means, but you would imagine, as President Trump said, that because it is used more colloquially in the world, that the former FBI director would have known it too. I just want to point out, we've looked for any sort of Democrat reaction. We don't have it yet.
Oh,
there is none.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, the former FBI director should know about this or did know about what the meaning of this was. And for him to then issue this weird apology and claim that he knew it was a political message but didn't know that half of it meant violence. On the other hand, he says he just happened to be walking on the beach and found these shells
and he
in
says,
the shape of 8647. I mean,
and he says it's cool. So why would he? Why do you think that's a cool formation?
Right. So he's trying to get back into the attention economy. Yeah. As Noah said, he is a narcissist. However, for him to then, when he gets caught doing this in an environment that is deeply concerning in terms of the history of the president having two assassination attempts, one that would have taken his life within a millimeter of his ear, is absolutely disgusting. And it just goes to show again that James Comey's history of destroying the institution of the FBI, completely destroying the distrust Americans have in this institution they should be able to rely on for objective viewing of violent threats. And now he's going to deny that as the FBI director that he doesn't understand what these symbols of violence mean. And again, he just happened to be walking and you find this symbol in the sand. It's like saying a friend is asking.
They've gone out to question him. So this story's not over. We're going to hear what his explanation is for that, all right? Now, the resistance, I would say at the moment, is a small R. I think Democratic politicians have been trying to break through, I would say with little to no success thus far. But sometimes pop culture kind of leads the way. And Dana and I were talking about this yesterday, Springsteen's on tour, opened up the other night in Manchester in England, and it was clear that he wanted a message. Because on the floor, there's a teleprompter. And he was reading this, and this is the message, how it went the other night.
There's some very weird, strange, and dangerous going on out there right now. In America, they are persecuting people for using their right to free speech and voicing their dissent. They're rolling back historic civil rights legislation. They're abandoning our great allies.
Here we go.
And siding with dictators.
It sounds a little bit like 2017. No, I don't know how you read that, but I think those on the left love to hear this, by the way. This is like red meat for them. But I think performers like Springsteen have an opportunity to cut through in ways that our politicians in Washington, D.C. fail to. What do you think?
It's quite possible, and it's certainly something that'll be resonant with the resistance crowd that you're describing. Aging hippies issuing political statements from the stage is something that I grew up with. I'm pretty comfortable with it, and our system can certainly absorb it. We don't criminalize that kind of speech. That being said, as I said previously, there is obviously a market on the left for direct street action. I think what was more illustrative of what we're going to see this summer was what happened in New Jersey in an ICE facility. Ras Baraka attempting to get himself arrested, in part because he wants to generate attention for himself because he's running in a primary for a statewide race. And if you think, and I think he made a smart calculation there, that he thinks he will generate traction with the voters he needs by making himself this sort of a target and by generating this sort of hostility, anxiety, and an air of violence. That's the sort of thing that does resonate with a small number of Democrats who punch way above their weight in their political coalition.
But small numbers of people vote in primaries.
Yeah, I just find Bruce Springsteen's bit old. This is something he's been doing for a very long time. These overwhelming, exaggerated messages of persecution in America while he's in Europe making this statement where they're putting people in prison for memes and hurting people's feelings on the internet. So the contrast of what's happening where he's standing and what's happening in the U.S. where you still have your First Amendment rights is quite interesting.
Like in England, if you post something online, you can get arrested.
You can get if you pray in the wrong place silently, you can also get arrested. I mean, there's so many things you can can do in Europe to get arrested for actually not speaking. So for him to say that the problem is here in America doesn't quite play out with the facts.
Yeah, he better stay over in UK. I'll tell you that much.
Let's bring in Kellyanne Conway. All right, so this obviously is a threat to the president's life, and that's illegal. I mean, this is something that you could go to jail for 5 years for.
It is, and he knows exactly what he was doing. James Comey is a proven liar, but he's never really had to testify under oath, apart from congressional committee hearings, about what he knew and what he meant in his intent. So I can't wait for that to happen. His phony book, for which he received an advance, Jesse, of millions and millions of dollars. You being interviewed by George Stephanopoulos does not testimony make. He lied in the book. He lied about the lies in the book. He knows exactly what he was doing because the FBI director is our chief law enforcement officer. The Bureau itself spends its days looking for clues like this, particularly against a president of the United States, and particularly one who has had his own life threatened.
And he's a Marine. He knows what these military codes mean.
The Never-Trumpers they just can't help themselves. They're completely irrelevant. And he does that to get a bunch of likes and reposts on Instagram, of all places. And for him to lie on top of it, to say, I didn't know that some people look at it as an act of violence, a call to violence.
Yes, you are a liar. You lied.
I actually think he hurts his case when he says, I just thought it was a political statement.
Right.
He's saying, I thought it was a political statement among those of us who don't like Trump and wish he weren't president. It takes one crazy person to say, well, even the former FBI director thinks I should do this.
And so he knows what it means when you put a target on somebody.
Yes.
And he has put a target on Trump for years. I mean, he was the one that made up the Russia collusion stuff. He was the one that framed him for being a Russian traitor. He was the one who blackmailed him with that dossier right before he was even sworn in. So he knows exactly what he's doing. He's an operator, and he's not some dummy. And he's the former FBI director. When you put something like this out, he knows exactly what he's doing. What do you think should happen to him? Do you think the Secret Service people should pay his visit to him in his house?
Yes, but I also like the fact that DHS, if not DOJ, is looking at it. Why not? It's a credible threat against the President of the United States. He's a public figure. He made himself that way. And Jesse, just quickly, January 5th, 2017, 15 days before Trump was inaugurated the first time, Comey led a meeting in the Oval Office. Biden, Susan Rice, Clapper, Brennan, obviously Obama. And Obama said, you're going to tell Trump about the golden showers? You're going to tell him about Russia collusion? He said, yes, I'm doing that tomorrow at Trump Tower. And he did. But he pulled the president aside as everybody was leaving the official briefing and kind of mentioned it to him in passing, the way I would say, how are the kids? Did you go to Disney World this year? Not. Oh, by the way, you are a target of an investigation. Jim Comey, it was found by the Inspector General of the DOJ, Michael Horowitz, it was found that Comey mishandled confidential, if not classified, FBI information 7 times in the short period that he was Donald Trump's FBI director. So here's somebody who's lied to Congress, lied in his book, lied about the lies, and is lying today about his intent. 8647, God forbid, it only means one thing. Don Jr. thankfully surfaced it in a tweet, let everybody know about it. And I think that we all need to know what his answers are to this. I don't take him at his word.
Yeah,
do a polygraph, Mr. FBI director. Why not?
Strap him up. I agree. Thank you so much, Kellyanne.
Yeah, a former FBI director saying he doesn't know what 8647 means. Okay, you're going to go explain to the court.
Clay Travis is the founder of Outkick.com. What grade would you give this Mideast trip?
A+, 100 on a scale of 1 to 100. I think it's one of the greatest weeks in the history of Donald Trump's political career. And if they're even praising him on left-wing podcasts, I think it speaks to how incredible he has done. You're talking about building sandcastles, though. James Comey, I'm trying to avoid cursing because I don't want to get anybody in too much trouble. But for him to post 8647, he's not 6 years old. He's not picking up seashells with his grandkids and showing them how to count. This guy is one of the biggest disgraces that I have ever seen. And I went and looked at his Instagram account. He's 64, first of all. He's not 19 trying to post bikini photos and make money as an influencer. He needs to be, I think, investigated thoroughly. And also just a few posts down from the 8647 was his endorsement of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, which he did with a seashell. Now, I'm not a great, brilliant expert in crime methodology, but if a guy had previously posted a political message with a seashell, and then he put a new political message up with seashells, maybe, possibly, he did it intentionally, which he clearly did. And I just think this is emblematic of the collapse that we're seeing of the Trump criticism, which was, he's Hitler, oh, we've got to kill him. All of these guys that spent a decade telling you that you were going to be on the wrong side of history, Jesse, that I was going to be on the wrong side of history, that everybody out there who voted for Trump was going to be on the wrong side of history. Guess what? We were on the right side of history. They're going to be the villains of history, and I don't think they have fully realized it yet. But get ready, buddy. Long after many of us are gone, you, Fauci, Joe Biden, everybody who protected Biden when he had dementia, you guys are going to become some of the greatest villains in the history of the United States. Get prepared for it.
First of all, that's great detective work, what you just did on the Instagram. Probably better detective work than James Comey did at the FBI. He didn't actually do detective work. He basically just framed people. But another thing, you don't stumble upon something like that on a beach walk. We know what beach he traffics. I'm not going to say that. But that looks like smooth sand. Now, where do you find smooth sand? You find it right next to the water, or you find it back by the dunes.
Yep.
Now, we've seen him on Instagram sitting on a beach chair in the dunes. And the last thing he posted was himself scratching out the sand. And you put that together with what you just said, this guy likes to make symbols in the sand on the beach. It's obvious he did this. And I'm not going to be the one to jump to that conclusion. The people that interrogate him will be, because I'm sure the Secret Service with a few lawyers are going to pay him a visit.
They should be there right now before the sun hardly sets on that beach. He's a disgrace. Everybody who protected Biden is a disgrace. But God bless our president and the incredible job he's doing in the Middle East. Amazing.
All right. Clay Travis, thank you.
God protect the 47th. That's all I can say, because this is just crazy that a former FBI director is saying that, yo, look what I found, but I don't even know what it stands for. You don't know what 86 stands for, and you are a former FBI director? I don't know, man. I don't know. You're going to have to answer the question.
President Trump is on his way home now from his Middle East trip. In just a few days, he raked in trillions of dollars in deals and promised committed to deals that are still taking shape and strengthen the United States alliances in the region. More and more Democrats are admitting, well, you can't help but be impressed. Jim Hines is the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee.
I'm not in the habit of praising Donald Trump, but I got to tell you, the last week or so in the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia is a different story. I got to tell you, I think the president has in this last week or so played the Middle East pretty darn well.
And there is more. Former Obama State Department official Ned Price says, quote, Trump has the ability to do things politically that previous presidents did not, end quote. A senior foreign policy aide to both Obama and Biden said, it's hard not to be simultaneously terrified and awed by his willingness to brazenly shatter so many harmful taboos. That's all a quote. One senior congressional Democratic aide let it rip with, it's amazing what can be accomplished when the president isn't bleeping brain dead. Ooh. The New York Post cover with this, shake it up. Trump stuns with flurry of Mideast deals diplomacy. Lucas Tomlinson is in Abu Dhabi, where the president departed just hours ago. Lucas.
That's right, Harris. President Trump has departed from Abu Dhabi, is on his way home back to Washington after a slew of business deals in the region that you mentioned. Now another one might be in the making, this time with Iran. President Trump confirming that he's presented Iran with a proposal over its nuclear program.
On Iran, has the U.S. given them a formal proposal? Has Steve Witkoff handed that over?
Yeah, they have a proposal, but more importantly, they know they have to move quickly, or something bad's going to happen.
And before
quickly,
leaving the Middle East,
Iran.
President Trump sat down with our own Brett Baer and said he wants to extend his commerce, not chaos theme to Iran.
Iran wants to trade with us, okay, if you can believe that, and I'm okay with it. I'm using trade to settle scores and to make peace. But I've told Iran, we make a deal, you're going to be very happy.
You feel urgency?
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and eventually they'll have a nuclear weapon, and then the discussion becomes a much different one.
You can watch Brett's complete interview tonight on Special Report at 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, Harris, let's count the receipts from this trip, shall we? It's been a historic three-nation swing for President Trump here in the Middle East. $600 billion pledged from Saudi Arabia, including the largest arms sale in history. $243 billion in change from the Qataris, including the largest deal in Boeing history. Plus that 747 jet to become Air Force One, getting Edan Alexander freed, and the billions in funding to American universities. And don't forget the $200 billion here from the United Arab Emirates, with a pledge of $1.4 trillion over the next decade, including the $200 billion up front, as you can see here. Now, hundreds of business leaders, captains of industry, Harris, from around the world have come here to the Middle East to support the president. They didn't have to be here. Now, looming over the president's trip here to the Middle East is the war in Gaza. The president saying earlier today, quote, "A lot of people are starving. There's a lot of bad things going on." No doubt Arab leaders here stressing that to President Trump before he returns to Washington. But the Israelis would like a word. Harris, earlier the Israelis said the deadline is over now that President Trump has departed from the Middle East. They want Hamas to free 10 hostages in Gaza. It's the Steve Witkoff plan, or else they're going to turn up the volume in Gaza. Harris?
Yesterday was the deadline, and Hamas does what it does. Savages. They ignore it and move on. All right. Thank you very much. We'll stay on that one and tell everybody what's going to happen next with that in the next few hours. In focus now, Republican Senator Tim Sheehy of the great state of Montana, member of the Senate Commerce, Armed Services, and Veterans Affairs Committees. Great to have you today. Let's start with the president's trip to the Middle East and kind of on the tail end of it now, some dangling participles with Ukraine and Russia, and now what's going to happen in Gaza with Hamas not capitulating and having any form of releasing hostages or ceasefire at this point.
Well, as we heard, even from Democrats on the Hill, Harris, it's pretty obvious that the best cure for Trump derangement syndrome is the truth. And they can't deny the truth that this trip has been an unbridled success for America. Business, not bombs, is the best way to get this region reoriented towards a pro-America stance. And some of these countries have been our greatest allies. I fought in those wars in the Middle East, multiple tours. In Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, they provided basing support, they provided intelligence support, and in some cases, key logistical support for our military operations throughout the region. And frankly, their prosperity and a very large portion is owed to America. Saudi Aramco opened up that region to modern oil exploitation, and their modern economy has been, in many ways, triggered by America. So they're repaying that, and this investment of $2 trillion into the bedrock of the American economy. It took Biden, I think, 4 years to maybe come close to $1 trillion. Trump's eclipsed that in a matter of days. So I think this is an incredibly powerful message to the entire world, and most importantly to a very chaotic region, about what America's values are and what's important to us, and the president has brought home a big win for us.
Look, this is happening simultaneously with all of this, and it's breaking coming into Fox News now. So we don't have all the details on this, but from both the president of France, Macron, has said that he has spoken with President Trump on talks, and he, of course, is talking about the situation between Ukraine and Russia. And also Zelensky is saying that he has spoken with the president via phone alongside Macron and others, the the Prime Minister of the UK, Starmer, after the meeting in Istanbul earlier. So obviously Putin, Trump not there. Delegations of people are there. And what do you get from just this loose reporting? We don't have a lot of detail, but Trump is in the mix.
Yeah, well, the reality is, as we see, the president wants to get deals done. He wants progress. He doesn't want unlimited negotiations and discussions to drag on for years on end while thousands of people die anywhere in the world. The reality is he wants things negotiated. He wants to sign the deal, get it done, so we can move on to the next. And the reality is the Russian invasion of Ukraine's gone on now for over 3 years. Thousands of people are dead. Tremendous economic damage to the region. It's time for it to stop. And as we see, Putin fears Trump. Putin respects Trump. This did not happen. No invasion of any neighboring territories. It happened under Obama, happened under Biden, never happened under Trump. So he's going to get a deal done here, and we're seeing that progress as we speak.
All right, let's move to this. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on President Trump said his trip on the trip that Iran has sort of agreed to terms for a nuclear deal. However, negotiations are ongoing. Even the president has said that. Secretary of State Marco Rubio added this.
They are at the threshold of a nuclear weapon. If they decided to do so, they could do so very quickly. If they stockpile enough of that 60% enriched, they could very quickly turn it into 90 and weaponize it. That's the danger we face right now. That's the urgency here.
However, the New York Times is reporting Iran's foreign minister said yesterday his country would never give up its right to civilian nuclear energy. Quote, none of our nuclear enrichment facilities will be dismantled, end quote. What is your reaction to particularly that pushback? Because the president, you know, he's in it. He wants to see this get done, but he said something bad is going to happen if Iran doesn't take the right steps.
Well, to be a good negotiator, they have to know you're willing to do whatever it takes to win. And the reality is Iran has been our most pernicious foe for almost half a century, from taking American hostages in 1980 to murdering American troops in cold blood time and again throughout the Middle East. They are a disgusting regime. They're an oppressive regime. Nothing they say can be trusted. And the reality is we have to take a hard line with them. Take no prisoners, no questions asked. They cannot have nukes. They can't have civilian nuclear capability. They can't have military nuclear capability. It's a hard red line, unacceptable. So I think the president has made that very clear. He agrees with that. And the truth is we cannot trust what the Iranian regime says. Their national motto is death to America. So they've made pretty clear where they stand. I think we need to make clear where we stand as well.
Well, and I'm fascinated by what's just happened in the last few days. Pretty much everybody encircled around Iran right now has met with President Trump. And those countries have greeted him like a really close friend, someone like a monarch in some cases, with so much respect and so much fanfare. So that's got to make Iran really nervous at this point about, well, OK, who's really out there on their side? No one. A new poll conducted Monday and Tuesday this week shows that President Trump's approval rating ticked up by 2 points from a few weeks ago. It's at 44% now. The boost came after the president and China's tariff pause, which sent markets, we know, soaring. But what else did it do? Why is this happening now?
Well, I think the reality is policies take time to implement. And as we know, our broader media landscape in America is not exactly friendly to President Trump. We've watched for years as they've persecuted him in court, out of court, in the court of public opinion. And anything he does, they will interpret through the worst possible light. Trump derangement syndrome is very real. And the reality is these tariffs were implemented for the very reason that we're seeing now, to correct trade imbalances, to correct unfair trade practices that have penalized American businesses for generations. He sought out to level the playing field on that. He's been running on that for over a decade. That was his mission, was to make the field level again for American businesses to succeed. And once the American people started to see the effects of that, inflation is down, as we saw in last month's report. For the first time in 4 years, we're seeing inflation finally abate. We're seeing American families have affordability come back. Gas is cheaper. People see the receipts. And Trump derangement syndrome can be cured by the truth. When they look at their receipts, they see progress, and that we're seeing in the numbers.
Real quickly, does this give you momentum on the Hill to get the big, beautiful bill done, both House and Senate?
I think it does. And I think the reality is, in addition to that, folks understand we have to get our fiscal house in order. We cannot hand our kids $60 trillion in debt in the next decade. So I think we're going to be focused on prioritizing the president's agenda while at the same time making sure we are getting our fiscal house in order, because it's a huge issue for the future of my children. Senator
Sheehy, thank you very much for your time.
I'm Steve. Thank you for tuning into the live show. Shout out to Mr. Busky. Shout out to Luke. Shout out to Zyra's Garden. Shout out to Enders. Enders, where the hell have you been? All right, with that being said, somebody in the chat, her name is Michaela King. Just double tap your screen, man. Life ain't this hard, okay? I'm just going to leave. Come on, man. Have a good time with us. All right, here we go. James Comey, man.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. As always, thank you for joining us. This is a Fox News alert. Disgraced FBI Director James Comey making a threatening post against Donald Trump tonight as the president is overseas. Fox's Peter Doocy is live from Abu Dhabi with all the details. My goodness, Peter.
And Laura, the real head scratcher about this very serious topic is that James Comey wants us to believe, and we have this photo here, that he saw a cool, these are his words, cool shell formation on my beach walk. And the cool shell formation, according to the person who used to be in charge of the FBI, shows shells in the shape of 8647. 86 is common restaurant lingo, of course, for denying service to somebody. But after about 30 seconds of Googling, you can see that a good chunk of people all around the world also associate 86 with meaning to kill somebody. An old mob saying, basically, you take somebody 8 miles outside of town and then you put them 6 feet in the ground. James Comey, again, a guy who has prosecuted mobsters, apparently had no idea that this was a thing. He deleted the original post with the cool shell formation, and he writes, I posted a picture earlier of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, and I took the post down. That's not enough for Donald Trump Jr. He says, just James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the Dem media worships. Demented. And Kash Patel, as we were coming to air, the new FBI director, one of Comey's successors, is saying that he is in touch with the Secret Service, and they are going to be sending Secret Service agents to talk to James Comey about what exactly he was getting at. Patel says, we are aware of the recent tweet by former FBI Director James Comey directed at President Trump. We are in communication with the Secret Service and Director Curran. Primary jurisdiction is with the Secret Service on these matters, and we, the FBI, will provide all necessary support. This is, of course, a president who has had 2 assassination attempts on him within the last 365 days. We were with him at an air base in Qatar this morning. He was telling the story about Butler, PA. The security footprint, especially on an international trip like this, is extraordinary. We watched the president's motorcade go by our hotel earlier. It's like seeing a fast, like a sped up video of a hour-long parade. There are so many cars. There are so many threats that exist against the President of the United States, coming from international actors, rogue actors. We did not think that we were going to see a former FBI director from here in Abu Dhabi suggesting something like this, but most White House officials at 3 a.m. here in Abu Dhabi appear to be asleep due to, unless they're just ignoring my text messages for some other reason. So we would expect a ton of reaction to this around sun up in 2 or 3 hours.
Well, Peter, this is the same man, James Comey, who implicitly, explicitly said that Donald Trump and his tactics are threats to democracy, threats to the future stability of America, threats to our norms. So are we to believe that the interesting shell formation is just another, that's a norm? Is that what we're supposed to say is normal now?
But Laura, yes, all true. Are we supposed to believe that James Comey, one of the world's most famous investigators ever, was just walking on a beach somewhere and he came across shells? There was nobody helped the shells get into this shape to say 86, 47?
No. No one believes
I don't know.
that.
I go to the beach all the time. You know what happens after somebody lays out shells like that? 1 minute later, they get washed away.
It's, well,
I don't know. It sounds like the Secret Service is about to find out.
As if there wasn't enough news this week in the Middle East. Now this back at home. Peter, get some rest. Thank you very much.
Let me know what you guys think in the chat, man. Does this mean that if former FBI doesn't know what 86 means, if former FBI director doesn't know what 86 means? Anyway, somebody says, let's watch cartoons.
Back to this massive story we're covering out of New Orleans, Louisiana. 11 escaped inmates.
Uh-oh. Oh, man. Oh, my goodness. Folks, another one.
Massive story we're covering out of New Orleans, Louisiana. 11 escaped inmates There is a manhunt underway at this hour. We have a brand new statement in from the Attorney General of Louisiana. She says, quote, someone clearly dropped the ball and there is no excuse for this. I'm in communication with Troop NOLA and the LA State Police, Louisiana State Police Superintendent, Colonel Hodges. It's all hands on deck. The first priority in any escape must be the immediate capture of the inmates in coordination with state and local law enforcement. But that effort cannot come at the expense of timely notification to the public, which is also critical to keeping communities safe. My office will do whatever it takes to determine how this happened and make sure that it won't happen again. I'm calling on a full investigation. This is beyond unacceptable. And once these offenders are back in custody, there must be real accountability. John, this, as we have more brand new information, that they do not have two of those back in custody. We were reporting, per their statement, that they had caught two and put back into jail two of these escaped inmates. They are now issuing a correction from the sheriff's office that only one inmate has been captured. There are 10 still on the run.
Yeah, and that fellow was captured in the French Quarter. Had not gone that far. No idea where all.
Yo, if you guys are in New Orleans, you better be careful out there. You seen the movie where this guy escaped from jail or from prison and he held a woman hostage, but the woman ended up falling in love with him. So don't go falling in love, ladies. I just got to tell y'all, man.
All of the other inmates went, if they stayed in the city or if they're trying to get out of the city. I mean, there's lots of places to hide in Louisiana. There's no question about that. But full-scale press, manhunt underway to try to get these inmates back because, as you pointed out, Sandra, some of them are very dangerous. We don't know if they've managed to arm themselves since their escape. You could bet, given what they were in jail for, that they are people that you don't want to encounter.
Okay, so a little more information here from the sheriff's office on the one captured inmate, Kendall Miles, currently back in custody. He's being rebooked at the facility for a new charge of what they're calling simple escape. The deputies found him hiding underneath a car at a local hotel on Royal Street. He was in a parking garage at the hotel, John. He was then transported back to the jail by the Louisiana State Police. The remaining individuals are still being actively pursued, and our deputies, in collaboration with local and state law enforcement, are working tirelessly to locate and return them to custody. The sheriff's office also says there will be a briefing top of the hour about 16 minutes from now in front of the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. That obviously will be a moment where we hope to get more information on the search for these inmates, John.
All right, we'll look forward to.
Whoa. 11 of them. How did this even happen? How did this happen? All right, Russia, Ukraine.
Now is Secretary of State Marco Rubio is with us. He is in Turkey tonight. Mr. Secretary, great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Shout out to the GOAT, of course, Luke. The GOAT. Okay. Yeah, that's the GOAT on this channel. Luke, God bless you, buddy.
Good to see you the other day, Sean.
Yeah, it was great to see you in person. You know, you made a statement that NATO is only as strong as its weakest link. This issue about NATO and other countries paying their fair share is going to be coming to a head in about 6 weeks, is my understanding. A lot of nations have not lived up to that. Where are we in terms of pushing people on that issue?
Well, actually, in 2018 was one of the most important moments in NATO history. It's when President Trump at the NATO summit walked through the different contributions of different countries, some of whom were under 1% of GDP. Less than 1% of their economy was being spent on defense. Since that time, we've seen improvements, and I can tell you that we are headed for a summit in 6 weeks in which virtually every member of NATO will be at or above 2%, but more importantly, many of them will be over 4%, and all will have agreed on a goal of reaching 5% over the next decade. It'll be the first time ever in NATO history where they have reached targets and goals that will allow NATO partners to be more than 50% of the alliance. That's a historic moment if it comes to fruition. That's what was agreed upon today by the foreign ministers. And I think all of that tracks back to 2018 when President Trump challenged the members of the alliance to step up.
You know, Mr. Secretary, you said the purpose of NATO is to prevent wars through its strength. That's why we want to see it grow stronger. You talked about $1 trillion in our military spending. Tomorrow, the Ukrainian delegation will be meeting with the Turkish foreign minister. And you also went into detail. There had been some hope, maybe, in the background. There's never any full commitment that Vladimir Putin might show up at this and have a meeting with Zelensky. And then you were pretty clear today that you believe if that's going to happen, it would take Donald Trump sitting down with Vladimir Putin. What exactly did you mean by that?
Yeah, it's my assessment. I think it's the president's assessment. By the way, I think he said publicly today that the only way we're going to have a breakthrough here, nothing's going to happen at this point. Given everything we know after months of working on this, nothing's going to happen until President Trump sits across the table from Vladimir Putin and puts it on the line and puts it on the table. I think that's the only chance we have at peace at this point. Given everything we've seen over the last few weeks, there's been talks, there's been negotiations, there's been trips and meetings. But in the end, I think we've reached the conclusion, and rightfully so, as the president has, that the only way this is going to happen, if it has a chance to happen, the only way it happens is as the president directly engages with Vladimir Putin. So I don't know what the date or the place of that is yet, but that's really the only chance at this point. And I think there are a lot of countries here that would privately share that assessment as well.
Do you have, Mr. Secretary, any degree of confidence? You've been clear that this war is going to end, not through a military solution, but through a diplomatic one. And you said it's either going to be sooner or later. And if it happens sooner, less people will die, less destruction that there will be. And, you know, the president keeps talking about the human toll, the humanity. All the human loss and tragedy and destruction and death that's taken place here. And for what reason?
Yeah, I think, Sean, I think the president the other night or the other day in Saudi Arabia gave perhaps one of the most impressive speeches of his presidency and one of the most meaningful speeches by an American president overseas in decades. And in it, one of the things he talks about is how he wants to see more building and less bombing. In essence, he wants to see us building things up, not destroying things. The president, frankly, is a lover of peace. This is a person that wants to stop wars and prevent wars and end wars. That's what the president endeavors to do. In fact, he openly has said, and he said it in the speech, that he wishes we didn't have to spend all this money on the military. We could spend it instead on creating wealth and prosperity and human development. Obviously, that's not the way the world works, but that's what he hopes we can achieve. And that's what he's trying to achieve here. That's it. I was just asked a question by the media here about this a few minutes ago, and I said I still don't understand why some would be critical of the president. They should be happy that the president of the most powerful nation on earth is a peacemaker who seeks to prevent wars, seeks to end wars, and seeks to stop existing wars. I think this is something we should be very proud of, that we have a president that seeks peace, seeks the end of death and destruction, in this case in the Russia-Ukraine war, which has gone on far too long, destroyed thousands and thousands of lives, and really is going to cost billions of dollars to rebuild from.
Well, obviously, we hope that some kind of breakthrough can take place. Let me go to where we are here in the Middle East, and you've been very, very clear, and the president has been clear. The number one state sponsor of terror, that would be the Iranians. They have to walk away from sponsoring terrorism, walk away from helping Hamas, Hezbollah, the Islamic Jihad, the Houthis. They have to stop firing missiles at Israel. But more importantly, walk away from building long-range missiles that have no other purpose than to have nuclear weapons, and walk away completely from enrichment. When you talk about that, I'm a trust but verify guy, as I know that you are. That means zero enrichment. That would mean American inspectors, and that would mean any place, anywhere, anytime inspections in the future as part of any deal. They would have to destroy their facilities. Those facilities would have to be destroyed for them for that to happen. We, for the first time this week, got an indication that they might be willing to make a deal on this. You have any high degree of confidence that they'd be smart? The president's been clear. They'll either do it the easy way or it will be done for them. I don't think it could be any more clear than he's been. Do you think you have any degree of confidence they will be smart?
Well, first of all, I think what the president did is extend an opportunity. And the opportunity is Iran can be a prosperous and peaceful country. And that's the opportunity before them, and he hopes that they'll take this opportunity and that they'll take this offer. He says this offer won't be around forever. And what he means by that is at some point, decisions will have to be made about more maximum pressure and other options, because Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Look, the regime, and our problem is not with the Iranian people. The Iranian people are a peaceful people, an ancient civilization and culture we admire greatly. Our problem is with a clerical regime that is behind every problem in the region. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the militias that have conducted attacks out of Iraq and Syria. They all track back to the Iranian regime. Syria, all the instability in Syria tracks back to the Iranian regime. It's a regime that every day and every Friday chants, death to Israel, death to America. We have to believe them when they say that. A regime like that can never have nuclear weapons, and the president has made clear they will not have a nuclear weapon. We hope it's through the path of negotiation. We hope it's through the path of diplomacy. Steve Witkoff is doing a great job at negotiating in a very difficult negotiation. This will not be easy, but he's doing a great job at trying to bring about that peaceful resolution to this problem, and we should pray that he's successful. I have confidence in him, but in the end, the decision lies in the hands of one person, and that's the supreme leader in Iran. And I hope he chooses the path of peace and prosperity, not a destructive path, and we'll see how that plays out.
Mr. Secretary, through public reports, and people that I have spoken to that would have knowledge of such things, their level of enrichment is quite high. It's believed. The IAEA has said so. If you're at 60% enrichment, it is not a stretch to get to weapons-grade enrichment at 80, 90%, whatever the level happens to be. My understanding is that could happen within a matter of months. So that decision of the Iranians will have to be made that quickly. Where do we stand in terms of their willingness to give up their ambition to have these weapons?
Well, we know. We're about to test it, and we'll find out. Look, when you say 60, that's misleading when people hear that number, because they think 60% enrichment and 90% is what you need for a weapon. Actually, 90% of the work it takes to get to weapons-grade enrichment is getting to 60. Once you're at 60, you're 90% of the way there. You are, in essence, a threshold nuclear weapons state, which is what Iran basically has become. They are at the threshold of a nuclear weapon. If they decided to do so, they could do so very quickly. If they stockpile enough of that 60% enriched, they could very quickly turn it into 90 and weaponize it. That's the danger we face right now. That's the urgency here. That's why Israel feels urgency about it, and that's why we feel urgency about it, but not just us. Throughout the Gulf region, no country in the region wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And you also talk about not just a weapon, they have long-range missiles that they can deliver those weapons to. This is a very grave risk. And they are enriching at that level, and they're openly doing it, by the way. In fact, their Congress, their legislative branch, actually passed a law requiring them to enrich at a certain level because JCPOA, the Obama deal with Iran, was canceled. So this is a critical moment. The president has made it a priority, and now people understand the urgency here because they are fairly close, too close for comfort to a nuclear weapon. We have to roll that back one way or another, and we hope it's peacefully and through the process of negotiation.
All right, so
Marco Rubio, man. I would always say this about Marco Rubio. He is definitely a skillful communicator, absolutely articulate. And a lot of people are saying, like, who's going to be the next leader in the Republican Party? Some people say J.D. Vance. Some people say Marco Rubio. Some people say Ron DeSantis. Some people say Tulsi Gabbard or Don Jr. But I say Marco Rubio, he is very, very skillful. But with that being said, it's not only that a former FBI director who is claiming he doesn't know what 86 means. It's not the fact that they're pushing for, in my opinion, violence. They're now, they have been trying to impeach this man for the third time. Third time, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out. They're trying to impeach Trump again, just like they did the first time.
Progressive Michigan Congressman Shri Tendar is backing down on his effort to impeach President Trump. Well, that was quick. After he utterly failed to rally his party around his message.
Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling. That has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump.
Well, that was then for Tanadar's stunt, which left his fellow party members furious. A few spoke to Axios, calling him utterly selfish and in his effort a waste of their bleeping time. I told you they like to cuss. Tanadar tried to win his own party over on the House floor, but the room was almost empty. And then when it came time to force a vote on the matter yesterday, Tanadar folded, writing on X, "So after talking with many colleagues, I have decided not to force a vote on impeachment today. Instead, I will add to my articles of impeachment and continue to rally the support of both Democrats and Republicans to defend the Constitution with me." Martha, who is he rallying? What is up with this guy?
Nobody knew who he was before this, for one thing, right? I mean, it's sort of like Al Green the last time around, the representative who began impeaching President Trump, making efforts towards that early on. The one lesson, we talk a lot about the lesson.
Everybody is trying to use Trump's name or say something about Trump so they can get some audience, especially these folks that are supposed to be for the people. Same thing happened with Letitia James. She said, "I will get Trump." Well, we know how that ended up. Now she's being investigated for mortgage fraud. And now this guy is saying he wants to impeach Trump. Nobody knew this guy like 2 seconds ago.
Lessons that Democrats haven't learned. One that they may have learned is that this route did not work for them last time around. They went all the way down the road to impeachment with President Trump twice in the first term. I think they feel that this is a dead end for them politically, and they would like this guy to quiet down and go away, at least based on the things that he's bringing up right now. So I think that, they talk about the future. You hear Chuck Schumer now, every time he's asked, what's the future of the party? We're looking forward. We're looking forward is the big mantra that they're going with right now. So I think they feel like the strategy is a weak one. And I think they were right to sort of douse it very early on and not sort of feed the flame of it to see where it would go on this round.
Well, unfortunately for them, Charles, it left plenty of room to talk about all those books that are dropping about Biden. We'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, Tanadar was not going to help them.
Watching the video, it felt like an SNL skit. I still want proof that this guy's in Congress. I don't believe it. It didn't seem real.
Look at him there.
I just thought he's making this up. I mean, really, this is real? It's like, it's absolutely. I want to talk to his constituents, right? Like, why? Who are you voting for? What's going on here? What crazy part of the country is this? It's not going to work. It's everything they've done. This whole thing about relitigating things, focusing more on what's happened in the past 100 years instead of the next 100 years, has backfired miserably, both as for the party and for our nation. And it's wise for them to maybe try to look sincerely, not trying to deflect from the fact that Trump is having a moment and saying we're looking to the future, but sincerely start looking to the future for our country.
Emily, I'm not sure he took the temperature politically of that swing state, one of the 7 that Trump won.
Charles, I'm with you. That one where he was standing outside, the guys behind him with the sign.
And just to add to what this guy said, of course, this is what I look like, right? When people say America is the same as the 40s, the 50s, or the 60s, in my mind, I'm thinking like, you must have missed the part where you've had precedent that looked like this for 8 years, ladies and gentlemen. So how is America still the same as the 40s, the 50s, or the 60s? How? Do you think America would have elected a person that looked like me to lead them in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 40s? We're not going to continue playing victim, okay? Of course, what happened, happened. We get it. But if you keep looking back, you would never know where you're going. You can't keep looking at your rear view mirror when you have a whole windshield in front of you. There's so many billionaires and millionaires in the United States that look like me. So stop playing victimhood. Stop your victimization mindset and realize that you got to move on. You can't sit here and keep playing victim when you can actually apply yourself and get the opportunities in front of you. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." He had a dream that one day there would be a president that looks like him in the White House. You think if Martin Luther King was alive when Obama became president, you think he would say America is the same as the 60s? I don't think so.
Signs were so clearly so paid actors. They look like so miserable. Like, what is this, mathletes meeting? Who is this? Get out of here. Look, here's the thing that amuses me, though, is that he was sort of excommunicated from that trajectory by the rest of his party, as we saw quickly withdrew their support for this, the co-sponsors, and then were like, stop. But also, the amusing part is like, oh, this is where you draw the line? Because they all talk with the same playbook of being like, this is catastrophic, right? It's a constitutional crisis, and now he's not mentally cognizant. It's all the things. So I sort of found it funny that on this, they were like, no, not today. But yeah, this guy, I mean, whoever is his constituent, I think you should audit what exactly he's performing under the salary that you're paying.
Yeah, you know, we've had more than 200 years of American history. We're about to approach our 250th anniversary. You've had the impeachment of 3 presidents, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, twice with Trump, obviously arguing the merits on the Trump ones, which I thought were absurd. But Sri Tanadar, bring this man in. And he thinks he found 7 articles of impeachment in 100 days. And oh, wait, he had 15 more days, so can't get anything past Sri. He found yet another article of impeachment. He found 8 reasons to impeach a president when we've only had 3 presidents impeached in 250 years of American history. Well done, Sri. We can't even outdo you.
Well, and he says he's going to use this time gap
Exactly.
to find more reasons.
He's going to take a pause to find more reasons.
Yeah, so when is he
stay
going to focus on his constituents?
And
Yeah,
be back.
never. All right.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno.
Oof. These folks. All right, here we
It
go.
is pretty remarkable that you have Biden administration officials saying publicly, wow, we wish we could have done something like that.
It's pretty great. I love it. And Biden didn't see what was possible. 1, because he didn't understand the power of oil. He was a green guy. And 2, he didn't understand how to play these people off of each other. Trump, we're very close with Israel, but we've sidelined the Israelis throughout this whole trip. We're directly negotiating with Iran, the Houthis, and Hamas. And we're basically waiting for Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza because that unlocks the Abraham Accords. And now that we got our last American hostage out of there, the pressure's on them. Now, the Iranians are selling drones.
Remember when these folks were saying that Trump doesn't like Muslims? He hates Muslims. He hates everybody.
To the Russians. How do we stop that? You get the Saudis to drive the price of oil down so Putin has to negotiate, end the war, and they cut off the drone sales. Also, we've isolated the Iranians because their best friend, Assad, is gone. He's lounging in Moscow. And so we also caught the Chinese buying sanctioned oil from the Iranians, and Trump's threatening to slap whoppers of more sanctions on that oil. And if that happens, they have to negotiate. The Iranians are in the weakest position ever. That's why they're going to do this. So if you control the Middle East oil supply, if we ever go to war with China, oh, too bad. The Chinese import 100% of their oil. So with our Navy and our control over the Mideast, we can bring them to their knees without even squeezing a trigger. Sebastian Gorka said something very brilliant today. Why are you laughing, Greg?
Your impression.
That's actually how you pronounce his name.
Gorka.
Gorka. He said 8 years ago, the strategy in the Mideast was security, destroy ISIS, and Abraham Accords. And now it's prosperity. It's kind of like what we did after World War II with Japan and Western Europe. We had this economic alliance that just created so much wealth over the last few decades. What has happened in the Middle East? They've been at war since the 80s. We're doing the same thing. They have liquid gold, and they're sitting right in the middle of the crossroads between Asia and Europe. I love it.
I'm going to disagree with you on the part about the Israelis because I don't think the purpose is to distance. In fact, when they killed Sinwar yesterday, the Americans said nothing. When Obama's team went over there, every time they went, they had to say something critical about the Israelis, and the Trump administration has not done that. Harold, do you want to politely disagree with me again?
No. I think, look, whenever an American president succeeds, it's good to be back around the table. Whenever an American president succeeds, I applaud them. And I think it's very hard not to see some of the things that Jesse just outlined that the president and his team have been able to accomplish on this amazing trip. The president did a little of everything he normally does. There's a great showmanship and a great theater. There's great substance. You have $1 trillion, it sounds like, if not more, of investment opportunities and commitments to invest in the United States from our allies there in the region. It's still not totally clear to me what we get for the lifting the sanctions on Syria, but I like the progress. I think you have to be willing to make peace with your enemies because you don't need to make peace with your friends. So finding ways in which to advance us commercially is a really, really smart thing. As he gets home, I'll be interested to hear the Israel part again. I disagree with you, Jesse, on that part. I agree with Dana. I hope
I'm
this
not
is
saying
not.
we're not allies. I'm just saying we're doing a lot of stuff on the side without them bringing.
No,
them
you
to
said
the
that we
table.
are distancing from them on
No, I
purpose
said
and making
we've
deals with other
sidelined.
people.
We're directly negotiating with Hamas. Never happened before. We're directly negotiating with the mullahs. Never happened before.
Pull the tape.
We always have the Israelis in our bag during these negotiations. We just did a one-on-one with the Houthis.
So I think thank you. I'll just take back what little time I have left. I think all of this is a positive, and I think I'm looking forward to the next. I think which is equally important because we've had such chaos and turmoil in that region of the world for a long time. I'm looking forward to how the president approaches the Ukraine-Russia negotiation. I hope that we still are able to get the rare earth minerals deals from them because I think that's so important to us being able to counter China going forward. And if this trip is any indication of what the president's able to accomplish, I'm optimistic about what he'll be able to get done.
Kellyanne, it's interesting to have the juxtaposition yet again. This has been going on for almost a year with President Trump getting wins and the Biden team continuing to suffer losses. And that also continued this week as you compare one administration to the next in the middle of all of these books coming out saying that Biden wasn't really even in charge.
Well, he clearly was not in charge. And look, this is central to the Trump candidacy and presidency, to just do this global transformative power of peace through strength, but peace through wealth now. And I think that those twin pillars really define his two interrupted terms. This week was bookended, though. Everything that we see that happened during the work week, Dana, it was bookended by Greer and Bessent being in Geneva, sitting down with the Chinese, and also Edon Alexander being returned in our backyard here to Tenafly, New Jersey. And I think on the back end of this, you're going to see so much more American investment in America, foreign investment in America. How many American CEOs were there this week? They didn't need to go. They can just go to the Oval Office. They can put out a press release about my new factory, my new facility, my new manufacturing onshoring. They wanted to be there because they knew that this was historic, not just for the billions and the trillions, but it's historic for the peace stuff too. I just want to review quickly. And Trump won. What he did to Iran is so transformative. Obama gets the Nobel Peace Prize. It's announced in October of 2009. He's not even on the job for 8 months, 9 months. He's going to get the Peace Prize. He gives us the Muslim Brotherhood. He screws up Syria, Libya, Egypt, you name it. Here comes Trump in the first term, and he says, Iran, we're going to cut off your basic, your livelihood, your oil, your energy production. And he enforced sanctions. What did that do? Iran was flat on its back looking to do a deal. Biden gets in there. He and John Kerry put us back in the JCPOA. They take off of the foreign terrorist organizations, the Houthis and Hamas, and look at everything that's happened since. So this is called causation, not coincidence. And the fact that the Democrats just can't shake themselves loose of Biden a year after they shook themselves loose of Biden tells you everything about that. If just a Democrat or three, Harold, would come forward and say, you know what, I'm going to vote for that Tax Cut and Jobs Act bill. I think this was great this week. I'm going to be part of the DREG. I'm going to be part of the energy dominance. To Jesse's point, if oil
you get all
goes
the Republicans,
down,
I'll get 3 Democrats if you get every Republican.
Okay, I'm working on it. But if oil goes down even more, this guy is completely unstoppable. This was the most successful week of the Trump presidency so far.
All right, Greg Gutfeld, without sneezing,
yes.
Can you give us a brilliant point?
I have hay fever. All right. Is that hay fever?
I think it's really bad allergies this year.
Yeah. It's interesting. Why does the world respond to Trump in a way that confuses Western media?
It's because the world wants what he has and the media doesn't. They understand aspirational goals, like you said. To them, Trump is a possibility machine. If you're going to meet him, you better meet him because you never know what you might get out of him. But there was no sense of hope with the Democrats, not when your hood ornament was a decomposing bureaucrat. What were you going to get out of that? I'm old enough to remember when the media was telling us Trump was a global laughing stock. Might have been a few weeks ago, I think. Now they're giving him jets. Before they were giving Joe Biden transfusions. Doesn't seem that people are treating him like a laughing stock. They're legitimately excited. They are alive around Trump. So it's another one of the media lies. We're sick of talking about the media's lies, but you got to ask, is the media sick of their constant losing? Their framework, their framing, which they use to perceive reality, keeps leading them to defeat. Every day, they think something's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. TDS is a lousy filter to perceive life. The election, trade, immigration, the Maryland man, every single issue, the Dems are ritually humiliated, and it's because of their filter. For Trump, doing big things is easy because we aren't stuck reinventing basic principles. He says, let's work on a peace deal. Let's get rich. It's not, let's push trans awareness in Malaysia. You want a laughing stock? The world's greatest country was going around the world questioning biology. These countries don't have the luxury or the time for that. They want peace and prosperity, not drag queen story hour. We were the laughing stock under Biden, and now it's all back to normal. They understand winning. So my advice to Dems is if you see somebody winning a lot, you got to ask yourself, what does that person have that you don't have? That's how you learn. You run into people your entire life, and you wonder, man, they got it figured out. It's one thing you look at Trump, he's got it figured out. They see it, we see it. Those are the people that should guide you. The problem with the Dems is their delusional assessment of Trump.
Facts.
Can't explain his success, and they also
Facts.
can't predict it. So
Facts.
they pin their hopes every morning waking up that he's going to fail. And every
Facts.
morning they're
Facts.
disappointed, and they get more miserable, and they get more desperate.
Facts.
I don't see any hope for them.
Like they used to hope that the judicial system was going to solve their problem
Yes.
for them. Yeah.
Exactly. Just like when people come in the chat and say, well, look at you, bro. You voted against your own right. You voted against your own interest. Look at you. You should be ashamed of yourself. Why would you vote for Trump? Look at your skin. Oh, you are, what do they say? What's that thing they call people who have some sense? You're a coon. You're a coon, bro. You're a coon. You're this, you're that. Your feelings don't pay my bills, though. Okay? You say what you want to say. I'm a big boy. I could take it. All right? I won't even block you. Okay? I want you to say trash. That shows me how smart you are. Okay?
TP, I come to you first on this. Is Jake Sullivan's answer there, do you believe believable or credible?
No. But well, first of all, when all these books are coming out, why not cancel your media appearances? Why is everybody out there talking? If you want to move forward, then cancel the media appearances and just take the L and just get over it for a while. Remember I used to say, why does President Biden never have a cabinet meeting? They never met. They went 9 months without meeting. And now you find out that anonymously, they were saying they didn't hear from Biden for weeks at a time. Pete Buttigieg just told the media this week that he didn't.
Here you have somebody calling me Uncle Tom, Poon, or whatever. And there is a man on the screen that has my skin wearing a dress. Okay? Here is a man on your screen right here. Okay? Right here, wearing a dress with Kamala's husband, with Joe Biden. Nobody's calling that guy a coon. There's another guy close to Joe Biden, and there's another woman close to Joe Biden. Nobody's calling these people coons. Nobody's calling these people what did he say? Uncle Tom. Nobody's calling them names because they support Democrat. But when you support a Republican, you are Uncle Tom. Yeah, I love being Uncle Tom. I love being a coon, man. Matter of fact, I I need to go make a T-shirt that says Uncle Tom. I'm gonna rock that motherfucker real bad.
They were saying they didn't hear from Biden for weeks at a time. Pete Buttigieg just told the media this week that he didn't see anything wrong with that. Well, what is Buttigieg doing all the time? He was working on his own political brand and not working on things like air traffic control. Then you have somebody like Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, who could not get into the Oval Office to talk to him about something called inflation. And that they had to have talking points written for everybody in order to do that. I'm beginning to think that Lloyd Austin might have said something to President Biden about going into the hospital and that somebody forgot. And that he just was a good soldier and said, okay, fine, I'm not going to say anything anymore. I made a mistake a couple years ago and I demanded that Jake Sherman testify. But Jake Sherman works for Punchbowl News. I meant Jake Sullivan. And I actually do wonder where the hearings are about this.
You think there should be hearings about a former president?
Absolutely.
Well,
so once they pass this big, beautiful bill, Harold, the Democrats are going to vote for. Some will get onto the hearings. And if they don't, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. Dana is right. This book by Tapper should have been called Fox Was Right. What's really new besides the wheelchair? We knew we didn't have cabinet meetings. When they did happen, they were staged. We knew no one saw them. So why are we talking about this book so much? It just confirms everything we knew because people in the inside told Jake, all right? This kills every shot Kamala would have had in 28 because the cabinet never met her and she's never been asked about any of these revelations. So the second she gets out there, she's going to get crucified. You know what she smells like? She smells like cover-up. She'll never get it off her, and for that matter, nobody in the administration. Where's Mayorkas working right now, Harold? For the Sinaloa cartel? Where's Binder working? She was the one saying Biden was running circles around her. The whole administration is a disgrace.
Greg, you've been eloquent about the media should share more blame here. Do you still, continues to be your point as you look at all these things?
Is that some kind of racist comment? You know, this is bigger than Watergate.
Yeah.
This makes Watergate look like a parking ticket. We don't need to move forward. We have to move backwards. There was this other tidbit. Cabinet members believe the president could not be relied on to respond to a crisis at night.
Sleepy Joe.
That means when Biden was president,
Sleepy Joe, ladies and gentlemen.
he was pure
Sleepy
25th
Joe.
Amendment material. How do we know this? We found out on May 15th, 2025, a year or two, maybe longer after the fact. So this book isn't telling on Joe. Joe's pathetic and sad. It's telling on itself. You know, when does information become so urgent that you don't save it for your stupid book? If this were Trump, if any of this information were about Trump, they wouldn't have saved it for a book. Because remember, while this was happening, Trump wasn't even president, and they were saying he was an existential risk. He was a threat to democracy. While they were saying Trump was a threat to democracy, they had an incapacitated president that they were covering up for. It's just, it's insane. This story is so big that I believe the books are designed to kind of let the air out of it and just like, let's get past this. We can't let them do this. We can't. This is a huge deal. Yep. We were lied to. Look, did you hear about, they were doing fake cocktail parties for Kamala Harris? And get this, because they were worried that she couldn't handle a cocktail party because she drank. We talked about her being drunk all the time. They were doing these dry runs because they thought she was an alcoholic. And if we made those jokes, oh my God, she's brilliant and poetic. Oh, how do you say she's so accomplished? No, she's wasted. Look at her when she talks.
The cover-up would be one thing, but they failed to cover what we all saw. And but for Fox News, we would never have seen people crossing the border the way we did. We would never have seen Joe and heard Joe Biden. I'm so sick of hearing, had he not run, Kamala would have had more time. She didn't lose folks because of racism and sexism. She lost because of eyesight and hearing. She had a different kind of cognitive challenge where she never stepped up into that role. If you see the President of the United States is not being able to perform, if you yourself as his number two don't have confidence in his competence, you are duty bound constitutionally and practically and politically to step in. And because she didn't work hard, they had no faith in that. By the way, I'm a little tired of hearing about his physical problems. That is not the problem here, folks. They stood at podiums. We don't know what was going on underneath the podium. I don't care. It's the cognitive decline. It is the mental capacity to not be able to do the job. I'm not letting any of them get away with it because they tried to ruin us. They tried to ruin our families. They tried to. They spent more time on my kids than Hunter friggin' Biden.
Lock them up.
And I'm not. You know what? I'm not forgiving any of them.
What about the pardons?
The 25th Amendment. You mentioned it.
Oh my goodness.
Greg, I read it again today. I paid a lot of money for that law degree. I'm going to use it once in a while. Damn it. I read it again today. It clearly should have been invoked by people who were responsible enough in that party. And I have one last question. Why would you even want a job you can't handle? Why does your family want you in that job? Look at Trump. He doesn't need that job. He took that job because he believes in this country and the people believed in him. But I would say that, you know, the folks who have covered this up and the journalists who looked for Russia collusion for 3 years. How many times would I ask about Russia collusion? They looked for something that wasn't there. They saw something that was there and lied to us about it. Don't let them off the hook.
Yeah, Harold.
Yep. Support that. I definitely support that. Check them all out. Go and check them out.
Well, Trump woke up in Qatar this morning and told the Sheikh, last night was fun, but I got to go. The Qatari said, please stay. We have more jets.
Legend.
Here comes the flyover.
Legend.
Trump said, I love you, but there's someone else. 47 then went to one of the richest countries of all, the United Arab Emirates.
This right here, this is what I voted for. This is my precedent. This is who I voted for. And if I'm asked to vote again, I'll vote for Trump over and over and over and over and over again. To the trolls in the comment, if I'm supposed to do this again, I'm definitely voting for Trump over and over. This is what I voted for because your lies and your divisive tactic is not going to work. You said this man hates Muslims. Everybody here are Muslims. Okay? Get in line.
Donald Trump was escorted by an army of BMWs and Mercedes. Nice cars, but we prefer made in America. For the first time in history, Abu Dhabi closed its biggest mosque so Trump could get a private tour. Out of respect, President Trump took his shoes off to walk on the largest handmade carpet in the world.
Legendary.
He told reporters he was taken by how beautiful the mosque was. He said, this is an incredible culture. Pure white marble as far as you could see.
The humility. The fact that this man is so wealthy, of course, I mean, he's not getting rich off of being a politician. He's been a billionaire for years, okay? Ask Oprah Winfrey, okay? Go ask Obama. Go ask all these people that were trying to take money from him years ago. All these politicians, Nancy Pelosi, used to go meet him to do what? To get donations from him because now, all of a sudden, he's a bad businessman. Back in the day, these folks used to come gather around Trump to take his money for campaign donation. Okay, so moving forward, the humility, the fact that he took off his shoes, that's just, man, I'm stunned.
Then 47 went to the Royal Palace, where he got a hero's welcome.
Legendary. Oh.
At this point, Trump's shaken every hand in the Mideast.
I shook more hands than any human being is capable of doing. That was a long deal, and they were big people, but they were starving for love. because our country didn't give him love. They gave him a fist bump. Remember the fist bump?
Trump's wrist got so tired from shaking hands, he let Lutnick sign the deal.
Better be a good deal. It's gonna be a good deal.
The UAE is investing $1.4 trillion.
Oh, wait. Ladies and gentlemen, wait. Trump has brought disgrace to our country. Nobody supports America. Nobody loves America anymore. Nobody wants to come into the United States. Okay? America is a laughing stock around the world. Correct? Oh, really? The tallest building in the world just put American flag around their building. Does that look like nobody respects the United States? Trump has made America a laughing stock. Does this look like America's become a laughing stock? Why do you like lying liberals? Everything you do is lie. Everything you do is advocating for violence. You've never just said, you know what, I love America so much, I support America so much. Even liberals would tell you, I don't think America is the greatest nation in the world. Why in the world are you inside America?
In America. We're building a huge AI data center in their country, and they lit up their city red, white, and blue to celebrate. But that might have been topped when the royal awarded Trump with his country's highest honor.
I am honored to announce that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan bestows the Order of Zayed upon President Trump.
Betting sites have Trump favored to win the Nobel Peace Prize. On this trip, he kind of earned it. America spent trillions trying to bring peace to the Middle East, and now Trump's making them pay us, and they love us. Today, 47 said he's getting close to making a deal with Iran. But if they don't play ball, things could get ugly. Iran's losing friends in the Middle East. Trump's making nice with the bad boys. This plan's been a decade in the making.
So 8 years ago, it was security, the destruction of ISIS, the Abraham Accords. Now, it's prosperity with these incredible deals. The two are inextricably intertwined.
Kellyanne Conway says this is peace through wealth. But the prosperity only sizzles
Peace
if you're on our side.
Wealth. Hell yeah.
We don't want India, for instance, continuing to buy weapons from Russia. We obviously want to end the illicit oil trade between China and Iran. We don't want Iran sending drones to Russia. There's a lot of moving parts here, but if you want stability, you need to have stronger ties with some of our partners.
The combination of trade deals and military protection makes us a great partner. India just dropped all tariffs on the United States. After Pakistan knocked down a bunch of their planes, they won't be buying Russian jets anymore. They'll be buying F-35s. If Iran and Russia don't have anybody on their side, they'll have no leverage. Trump has the keys.
Deals
I got the keys, keys, yo.
When the time is right, that's when the president is in the room with Putin. But my expectation is imminently.
What does imminently mean?
That's all you're getting.
Exactly.
Putin won't come to the table until Trump's on the other side. It could happen any day.
We'll be leaving tomorrow, as you know. Almost destination unknown. Because we're getting close. Could you be here? Could you be there?
But before Trump left the Middle East, he surprised our troops with special guests Lee Greenwood and Theo Vaughn. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News.
Oh, man. Oh, my goodness.
Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany on this Friday. Here is my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Tomi Lahren, Fox News contributor
ladies.
and host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick and FoxNews.com. Rosanna Scotto, Fox 5 anchor and host of The Underground Economy on Fox Nation. And Paul Morrow, Fox News contributor, attorney, and retired NYPD inspector. What a day to have him, because this is our lead story. Former FBI Director James Comey is under active federal investigation for assassination threats against President Trump. I can hardly believe it. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. He posted this picture of seashells arranged in the shape of 8647 with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." No, not so cool. In fact,
all right, one more time. I just want to say a big shout out to Luke, the GOAT. Shout out to Luke, the GOAT. Bless you. Thank you for the super chat. Luke, God bless you.
86 is frequently used as a call sign for murdering or getting rid of someone. You would think the FBI director would know that. While the White House swiftly condemned the message as an attempt to put out a hit against the 47th president, Comey took down the photo hours later and posted this curious explanation, quote, "The shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took down the post." You'll notice there's not an apology there. And it's hard to believe that a former FBI director with a storied career in law enforcement had no idea about the meaning behind 86. It's defined in the Urban Dictionary this way, quote, "To get rid of, originally for killing someone, the phrase 80 miles out and 6 feet under is reserved for someone who had to dig their own grave 80 miles from civilization and then get shot execution style." Comey had no clue. President Trump, though, is not buying it.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason.
So a source of mine at the FBI I corresponded with this morning, this is what the source said to me, currently at the FBI. The former director not knowing what that meant is one of the least believable things he has ever said, and that's a low bar. But the more he behaves like this, the easier it is to see how his leadership under the Bureau became so weaponized. It's made the work of Kash Patel and Dan to root out the culture and focus on the priorities of letting good cops be cops all that more important. I think that's spot on, Paul, because I want to pull up the resume of James Comey. Look at this. FBI director, you can see there, 4 years, Deputy Attorney General, Southern District of New York, Eastern District of Virginia, and in fact, at SDNY, guess what he worked on? The Gambino crime family. Yeah. So you don't think he knew what 86 meant?
You know, I always heard 86 referred to a bar downtown at 86 Bedford, a place called Chumley's. It's an old speakeasy, and it's still there, and the address is 86 Bedford, and so that's a bit of a New Yorkism. He was in New York. He was the U.S. attorney here. Now, full disclosure, he was there before I started bringing cases there. But that said, I'd heard about him by reputation, et cetera. And I think let's expand the story. I think what this really does, first of all, he's the former FBI director, right? He's playing with shells on the beach. I mean, this is what it comes to. Yeah. But secondly, this validates every one of the worst theories you ever heard about the deep state and the weaponization of the FBI. Let's remember specifically what went on with him in the lead up to the 2016 election, right? You had that story break about Hillary Clinton having a server in a bathroom out west someplace. I think it was in Colorado, and classified material on it, right? They do the deep dive on it. That is the Bureau. They come back with a term, gross negligence. That puts it firmly under an arrest. That's in the statute. Under Comey's leadership, that language, that specific language got changed. And then he came out and he gave that very obfuscating press conference saying, we're not going to charge, nobody would go forward with this. You know who changed that language under his leadership? Peter Strzok. That's not as per me, that's as per CNN's reporting. That validates, this stuff validates all our worst theories about what happened. And I know plenty of good agents who are very happy to see him gone, very happy we have new leadership.
And you can't view this in isolation. You've got to view this in the context of Jim Comey's other statements. Watch him here. I'll ask you, do you think this man has an axe to grind? Here he is fantasizing about putting Donald Trump in a double-wide jail cell.
Do you agree with that it would be difficult or nearly impossible for the law enforcement institutions to put him in actual jail?
No, they would just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population. But it's obviously doable.
I mean, that's not a normal fantasy, Tommy.
No, it's not. But as disgusting as what he posted was, and he says he just came upon it and decided to take a photo. He's an influencer now, I suppose. But to that point, actually, as much as I think that he has weaponized and as much as I think that he would likely like to see horrible things happen to our president, which is abhorrent, I've noticed a pattern with these Democrats or Democrat-adjacent operatives. And it goes right along with the AOC, the Bernie, the Jasmine Crockett. In order for them to get attention in this news cycle, they have to do things like this. They have to continue to up the ante because they get attention for it. And they don't care that it's negative attention. They care that people are talking about him. And that's what I feel like a lot of this is. I mean, President Trump had to address it, right? We're talking about it now. It's as if, and though to get relevance and a chance to hit the news cycle again, they have to do things like this. And there's never any consequences because cancel culture never catches up with these individuals. That's what I think this is, a play for attention.
You know, and talking about finding shells on the beach, Emily, that's apparently something he likes to do. And apparently he finds bizarre things on the beach. I ran pretty much every day of Christmas break on the beach. I never stumbled upon like violent messages about Trump or painted shells, but Jim Comey apparently does. I don't know what beach he's on. Look at this. This is a shell he stumbled upon in October. He put it out and you can see it has a political message, vote Harris. He said, saw this at the beach. Ariel understands the assignment. I mean, he finds some interesting things on his beach walks.
Ugh. I mean, to me, this is like the embarrassing thing about social media is that it gives the quirky components of people an actual amplification method. Look, he and his meager amount of followers now sees essentially that he's relishing and reveling in the fact that violence is cavalier to them. And that, to me, is what this signifies, which is that you will never get a condemnation of violence from the left ever, and that they will always excuse and approve any threats of violence against the president because they have dehumanized him and they have created him to be a monster that needs to be destroyed. There's absolutely no humanity. And I believe that he should be held to a higher standard as a former FBI director. And the argument over whether he knows 86, well, that just either makes him incompetent or completely have grown up under a rock. I mean, even when you said server, I was like, oh, yeah, cocktails. All of us who have waited tables, anyone who is in the real world, who has been at a restaurant or seen a menu, we know what 86 is. So for me, I think I see this as a spinelessness because now that he says, oh, I didn't know, well, then why don't you own it? You sure behind the scenes and in front of some cameras are real bold about the comments you make about the president. So why don't you just own what you did instead of now trying to say I didn't know what it means? To me, it just adds invertebrate on top of the list of deficiencies and incompetence that he has. I hope, by the way, they pursue this legally.
Yeah, and it seems like they might be. You know, Rosanna, this was an op-ed he published in the Washington Post last year, and he was slamming Trump for inciting political violence. We should always worry about political violence, especially when violent rhetoric and behavior are embraced, even celebrated by one of our political parties and its leaders. For someone who's taken the time to write an op-ed about political violence, you think he would think twice after a bullet grazed the head of the former president, 2 assassination attempts. I think he'd think very hard about the messages he's putting out about a sitting president.
He's been very irresponsible in his words and his actions. I mean, we're talking about 86. He comes from a law enforcement family. Right. I mean, I come from a restaurant family. And so we know what 86 means. Like, get rid of whatever you're about to serve. It's gone. But what was so cool about that little rock formation or shell formation that caught his eye, that he thought it would be great to put on his social media? It was not exactly the right thing. And, you know, you go back 2016, a lot of people think he cost Hillary Clinton the election when he talked about, you know, investigating her for the private service. And then he also went after Trump back then for the Russian collusion. So this is a guy who said some crazy things along the way.
Yeah, and, you know, I didn't want to have our producers grab this because I don't want to give this man any more attention than he's gotten, but he did post something at 5:29 p.m. yesterday. Nice, from Publishers Weekly. Out Tuesday, May 20th. He has a book out next Tuesday. So you have to ask yourself, was there a PR component to this? No one's in his mind, but the book message came out about the same time as the beach walk when he found the message about President Trump.
Wild. Absolutely wild. A former FBI director saying he doesn't know what 86 means. Regardless of whatever he's saying now, he's the talk of the town. So his book is definitely going to go viral because I guess that's what he wanted. And he got it. Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe.
Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries now still trying to push forward as Democrats continue to be confronted about former President Biden's mental decline, with a steady drip of new revelations on his condition coming to light. I want to bring in former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on this. And Kevin, good day to you. You noted it. I remember hearing it from you back in the day. Chris Murphy, Democratic senator, says no doubt. He says there's no doubt about it. The debate is whether it was enough that it compromised his ability to act as chief executive. Now, there's a bunch of books out there right now. Maybe there's more coming. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but perhaps that happens. At which point do Democrats finally shake this? Because it's just a cloud that's moving over them every day.
They're trying to ignore it. They're trying to say, oh, we're just looking forward. But I think the leaders that covered this up should have to resign. So that means Schumer and Hakeem should actually resign, because they saw the same thing I did. And when I came forward with what was going on, they all attacked me. They tried to even do the cover-up. Instead of just not saying anything, they attacked those who tried to tell the truth. And they allowed the country to be in this position. That's not a place for a leader to be. When you can see what was going on in the White House, and Dana, you know this better than anything, that White House is a place that is humming. Under Biden, nothing. It is so quiet. And then when you had meetings with him, you had a different meeting every time. But there's times his mind was not there. That he led me into the swimming pool one time. Another time he was dazed that he saw his wife Jill. And why did Jill have to be in so many meetings?
Unlike others, you were honest about what was happening. You told people what you saw. No, so yesterday, we don't have this sound, but Jake Sullivan, who's a national security advisor, he's being interviewed yesterday, asked if he ever noticed anything. And it's reported in the book that a couple of times the president looked at him and called Jake Sullivan Steve. And he said, nope, never saw anything. I mean, but you imagine that the Democrats were calling for the 25th Amendment against President Trump in his first term. And none of these people thought this was a concern, that the president of the United States and his national security advisor didn't have clear lines of communication?
No. But the worst part is, privately together, they acknowledged his problems. They made jokes about it. They said he was our zombie. This is the highest leaders in the cabinet would say this about this president, because they would talk about him not recognizing him, calling him by a different name, and then go out and attack those who ever brought it forward. That, to me, is the biggest crime of all, to allow this to go forward, to put America in this jeopardy. And then you wonder why we had such terrible foreign policy. Why were new wars created? Why did we look weaker on the world stage? Why did we lose? Well, they're at fault because they covered up. And this is a country that if somebody falls behind, somebody else is elected to step into that position. They should not have been silent. And if they were leaders and they were silent, they should step away from their jobs.
New York Times did a focus group of Democrats. These are voters now, okay? Here's 4 quotes. Ariel's age 23, Indiana. What do you think of the Democratic Party? Disappointing a little bit. Harold out of Florida, age 54. Ariel took the words out of my mouth, he said. Disappointing. Spencer, age 30, out of Illinois, white, therapist. Useless, I'm sorry, is his quote. Terrell, age 39, Texas, black, nonprofit. Inept is his quote. How do you turn that around?
You have to turn it around. It has to change. I mean, it's not just the voters. Look at the Democratic leader in the Senate in Florida. He literally resigned from the party because he says the party has left him. If the party has gone so far one way, because remember what the party has done. They changed their election rules about which state starts first. They pre-pick who can be their nominee. They deny other people from even running, like RFK. So in those situations, what they need to do is start with new leadership. That's the only way they're going to build trust. And they need to start with ideas. Get off this idea that your whole campaign is to just oppose President Trump. Go out and talk about policies. And for the first time, I saw a few Democrats literally crediting President Trump with his foreign policy trip he just went on. Finally, they're only waking that up because their own voters are telling them, you're
Kevin,
being dumb and we're voting for somebody else.
Sorry to jump in, but I do want to get you on record with this topic. Let's just play from Speaker Johnson. He's trying to get a big, beautiful bill done. You know how this goes. Let's play his sound here.
Meeting you were having with folks inside there, go.
Forward progress. We're going to look at some numbers tonight and keep this thing moving forward.
So there's no guarantee that you're having a budget committee meeting tomorrow?
We're having a budget committee meeting tomorrow. That's the plan.
What if it doesn't get out of budget tomorrow?
It'll get out of play.
You're confident?
I'm confident.
Any words of advice, or either for him or for us, on how we cover this? Because I've decided not to look at it for a couple days, but it seems like President Trump is now being called upon to weigh in and bring these people together.
Well, nothing ever passes unless President Trump's behind it. But first and foremost, this bill is going to pass.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Shout out to the GOAT one more time. Shout out to the GOAT, Luke. Shout out to you, bro. Thank you.
Because think about it. It's not like it's a brand new bill. All this is doing is codifying the tax code that we have. So if you vote against this bill, you're raising taxes. If we're concerned that Chip Roy is complaining about a bill, wait till Monday, he'll complain about the next bill. This bill is going to pass the budget. This bill is going to pass the floor next week. There's no other place. Now, if the speaker asks for my advice, structure dictates behavior. What you should have done is work these problems out in the room with the people you're talking to now a month ago. And that way, once it passed the floor, once it passed the committee, it'll pass the floor. It's just, you need to work these problems out. But this bill has to pass. No Republican can sustain themselves by voting against it. All you're doing is raising taxes, and it's the president's promise, no tax on tips and others. Jason Smith has done a tremendous job in Ways and Means. They passed the bill. If it's Ralph Norman and Chip Roy complaining, they'll complain about the next bill, but they'll fall in line. And if you see the SALT, you'll get to that, but you should have negotiated that already.
All right, we'll see.
Yeah.
Good to have you.
A lot of plates spinning in that bill still. We'll see how it works out. Kevin.
What do you guys think about this bill? Do you think it's going to pass? I think it has to pass because if you're trying to cut taxes, largest tax cut in American history, and most people will say tax the rich. Well, the rich employs poor. Okay? So how does that work? Tax the rich. It's only going to trickle down to the poor. So when you say tax the rich, what does that even mean? Tell me.
Morgan Ortagus is Deputy Special Envoy for the Middle East and joins us now. Morgan, great to have you on the program. So what do you think, first of all? What's your reaction to that? Can we pop that picture back up? This picture that Zelensky is clearly wanting to show the world. This huddle with Western leaders mentioned that this was a phone call as well with President Trump. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I think it's showing President Trump's leadership once again to do something that President Biden and his administration and even our European allies weren't able to do for the past 3 years, and that's to end this war between Russia and Ukraine. We know, in fact, that this war did not start on President Trump's watch. It's something that wouldn't have started and did not start in his last administration. But we were handed lots of ongoing hot wars around the world, including this one, which is the worst war on European soil since World War II. And President Trump, my boss, Steve Witkoff, Secretary Rubio, they have been working diligently with the vice president as well to make sure that we can put this Ukraine and our European allies in a position where they can be at the negotiating table and ultimately to end this war. President Trump campaigned on being a president of peace, and that's what we're attempting to do. We're just at a little over 100 days into his presidency. It's a shame, of course, that this war went on for 3 years, but we're going to try to clean up a lot of the messes that were left for us.
So I want to come back to that post on X, because here's what Zelensky said as he was sitting there with Macron, Starmer, Merz, and Tusk, and on the phone with the president. He said, "It's important that the world holds a strong stance. Our position, if the Russians reject a full and unconditional ceasefire and an end to killings, tough sanctions must follow. Pressure on Russia must be maintained until Russia is ready to end the war. Thank you to everyone in the world who was helping." Zelensky was hoping to meet with Putin in Turkey. That never happened. Putin didn't go. Is this going to end with the president having to get very tough on Russia with sanctions?
Well, I think you've heard the President Trump speak about this over the past 2 or 3 weeks. He did not like a lot of the attacks from Russia that he's seen, the killings of the innocent. He's talked about, he's very frank with all of you as reporters. He talks to the press more than any president, certainly more than President Biden ever dreamed of doing. And he's expressed his frustration. At the same time, like with Russia or with Iran, President Trump, Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio are trying to show them that there's a
better path forward, a better future if they choose peace. So I think the president has a lot of leverage here. He's trying to bring both sides together in a war that, listen, there's nobody wins if this war continues. You know, the last administration tried to play a game of a war with attrition with the Russians, which in history no one's ever won, right? As long as it takes was never a winning strategy. It certainly wasn't in the last administration, and it's not one that really works with the Russians. So we are working to try to.
Okay, so for everybody trying to check out the big, beautiful bill, you can go on congress.gov. You can see some information on the big, beautiful bill, which I recommend you go on and read for yourself. But this right here is what I voted for. Okay.
Fix many years of failed and bad diplomacy. It certainly is a challenge, but I think the president has his top team working on it.
All right. Speaking of which, this was a question put to President Trump on Iran and the pressure we're putting on them. Listen.
On Iran, has the U.S. given them a formal proposal? Has Steve Witkoff handed that over?
They have a proposal, but more importantly, they know they have to move quickly, or something bad's going to happen.
So tell us more about this, Morgan. What kind of pressure is on Iran in this moment?
Well, listen, I think you see a couple of different things. First, in President Trump's second week of his presidency, he went back into the maximum economic pressure campaign against Iran. That was a policy from his first administration in which he said Iran would never obtain a nuclear weapon on his watch. Crucially for Steve Witkoff, my boss, and for the technical team, for the first time, Iran is having to negotiate under the real threat of force, the real threat of pressure. Now, President Trump has, of course, said he wants a peaceful resolution. I believe him. I know he wants to be a president of peace. I know it's not his first instinct to choose a military option. However, he has left all options on the table, and that's why you heard him say at the end of the clip that the Iranians need to take this seriously. You know, at some point, the regime in Iran is going to have to care more about the Iranian people than they care about their terror proxies, than they care about building weapons that would only completely destabilize and up in the Middle East. If Iran were to obtain a nuclear weapon, that is a doomsday scenario for all of our allies and friends in the Middle East. The Iranians know it, and at some point they got to care more about their people than the terror proxies that they support. We're trying to get them to see that there is a better and brighter future for their people, or we could also continue under the president's very good policy, which is the maximum economic pressure campaign.
Well, they've been in power for 46 years and haven't shown any sign of what you're talking about there. I wanted to ask you about this. It happened in Israel. It's just a horrible, horrible thing. A woman in the West Bank, Israeli woman, was on her way to the hospital to deliver her baby. She was shot and killed by a Palestinian in the West Bank. Here's the coverage of it in the New York Times. An Israeli woman on the way to a hospital to give birth was shot and killed in the West Bank on Wednesday in an attack that Hamas applauded as, quote, a heroic act. The baby boy survived after being delivered in an emergency cesarean section, Israeli health officials said, and remained in serious but stable condition. No Palestinian militant group took responsibility for the attack, but a Hamas spokesman praised the shooting in a statement. This is the group that Israel's trying to make peace with?
It's pretty disgusting, and now that little boy and his siblings are without a mother, and that's I mean, how could you praise that, right? There are things that sadly happen to the United States and Israel when we're in war. There are things whenever people are accidentally killed, but nobody wants that. You condemn that. You certainly don't praise that, right? There's nothing good that happens. But this is why, by the way, the United States, President Trump, Israel, and I would say crucially all of our friends in the Arab states, Gulf Arabs, Egyptians, Jordanians, everybody is talking to us and confirming that Hamas cannot govern Gaza. This is exactly why. You're never going to be able to, as you just pointed out, to make peace. You're never going to be able to govern and to live peacefully with your neighbors when you have people that spend their days praising when a pregnant woman is murdered. It's really disgusting stuff. This is why we stand by our greatest partner and friend.
Can we all just live in peace? Can we try that for like 4 years? Like 4 years? That would be good to start with. Can we just live in peace? Can we try that?
And now, who says we can't? That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, forget James Comey for a moment. What an amazing week this has been. Look at how they greeted Trump in Dubai tonight. The Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, gives a salute to America. Now, personally, I love seeing all the pomp and circumstance for a real American president this week. Which country was the best host of the U.S. delegation, do you think? You watched a lot of it. Well, it was like they were all trying to outdo one another. America has never seen anything like this. For decades, we've been locked into fight mode, captive to stale strategies and dusty thinking. Americans were conditioned to believe that we couldn't show strength unless our military was firing missiles or we were dropping bombs somewhere. But Trump never bought any of this. He never bought that line. From day one, his attitude was, since this hasn't worked, why not try something different? His radical idea was, let's make more friends, more money for our people, and we'll fight fewer wars. Now, this simple concept has been at the core of this week's historic trip.
I don't think our friendship's ever been stronger than it is right now. And you will never see anything like the relationship that we have. We just left Saudi Arabia, as you know, and you have a fantastic crown prince.
These weren't cluster bombs. These were love bombs, and they continue today in the UAE. Trump was the first American president to visit there. So rather than insult them with lectures, he took time and showed respect.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Your Highness. What a lot of people don't know, I think my staff is very surprised by it. You and I have been friends for a long time. We've been good friends. And what they don't know about you is that you are considered a truly great warrior.
This is how you do it. It's diplomacy, Trump style. And it often involves business. Business that's...
You guys remember when a reporter asked Joe Biden, he said, are you going to talk to Vladimir Putin? He said, no, why would I? He is a war criminal. Nobody should be talking to Putin. So please tell me, how would you end a war if you're not talking to the person fighting the war? This is how you do it, through diplomacy. You open channels of conversation and you leave every option on the table so everybody knows, you know what? I tried, but you didn't take my advice. But what did we get 4 years ago? All of this started when Joe Biden became the president of the United States. Ukraine, Russia. Of course, there's been tension in Ukraine from Russia. Of course, everybody knows that. But it didn't escalate until Sleepy Joe.
Mutually beneficial. And his involving corporate leaders, frankly, that was a masterstroke. And it's paying dividends, first in Saudi Arabia, then in Qatar, and today in Abu Dhabi.
A wonderful brother came to Washington a few weeks ago, and he told us about your generous statement as to the $1.4 trillion. And all I could say is thank you very much. We have now, I think, substantially over $10 trillion of investment. And now when they add the $1.4 trillion, we easily break that number. We're having numbers that we've never done before. We are going to be your friend and we're going to be your partner, and we really appreciate your confidence and an investment. That's your biggest investment that you've ever made, and we really appreciate it.
What a concept. An American president as the promoter-in-chief of the United States. Unapologetically pro-American, with a hand of friendship always extended.
I shook more hands than any human being is capable of doing. They were starving for love because our country didn't give them love. They gave them a fist bump. Remember the fist bump in Saudi Arabia? He travels all the way to Saudi Arabia in that case, and he gives them a fist bump. That's not what they want. They don't want a fist bump. They want to shake his hand.
More than a fist bump. But wait. I thought it was Biden. Remember, he flew all around the world. He was the master at foreign affairs. After all, he was so inspiring.
The message I want the world to hear today: America is back.
Wow.
America is back.
Oh,
Diplomacy is back at the center of our foreign policy.
Oh, yeah, that didn't work out too well. Joe may.
Take a look at diplomacy right here.
Is back. Diplomacy is back at the center of our foreign policy.
Oh, yeah.
This is what Joe Biden's diplomacy looks like. Like, you just open your eyes and realize that no, Orange Man is not the devil. This didn't happen under the Orange Devil, okay? According to the Leaves. This happened under their Messiah, Joe Biden.
That didn't work out too well. Joe may have logged a lot of miles on government jets and met all the world leaders, but none of it, and I mean none of it, meant that Americans were any better off. Instead, a lot of us in America were embarrassed. And now, a new era with Trump 2.0. It's hard work, friendship, and optimism.
This has been an amazing trip. We've raised trillions of dollars of investment for our country. And we're dealing with really good people that have been abandoned in a way by our country and by the United States. And we're not going to abandon. We have very good friends in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar. They felt abandoned. They were going to be captured by China from the standpoint of trade, and that's not going to happen anymore.
No, it won't happen again. But only Trump and his team saw this. Remember, for years, the old dinosaurs of the D.C. foreign policy establishment, you know who they are, they dismissed, they ridiculed his brash approach. They called out his supposed foreign policy naivete. But after this trip,
I'm not in the habit of praising Donald Trump, but I got to tell you, the last week or so in the Middle East, I think the president has in this last week or so played the Middle East pretty darn well. I got to give him some kudos there.
I don't know why Joe Biden didn't do this. I don't like Trump's motivations for lots of things he does, but one thing you will say is he's not like tied to this like constant fear, stupid, blob type, well, we don't do this, so we must leverage the sanctions for blah, 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 No, sometimes you just have to try something different.
Okay, liberals praising Trump. Then this headline, Biden officials impressed by Trump's Middle East visit. One saying, gosh, I wish I could work for an administration that could move so quickly. And the China box out also getting noticed in this piece, calling Trump's trip remarkable because of mega deals and because he's outfoxing China. Again, that is 100% right. Think of all the idiotic headlines trashing Trump's approach to foreign affairs. He's just like Putin. He's destroying our alliances. Total chaos. But through all of that, Trump just ignored the white noise and he kept smiling. You notice he's smiling a lot in his second term? And he's doing things his way and knowing that it was his job to fix the mess that all the others had left behind. And that's the angle.
Well, Trump woke up in Qatar this morning and told the sheikh, last night was fun, but I got to go. The Qatari said, please stay. We have more jets.
Here
comes the flyover. Trump said, I love you, but there's someone else. 47 then went to one of the richest countries of all, the United Arab Emirates.
Legend.
Donald Trump was escorted by an army of BMWs and Mercedes. Nice cars, but we prefer made in America. For the first time in history, Abu Dhabi closed its biggest mosque so Trump could get a private tour. Out of respect, President Trump took his shoes off to walk on the largest handmade carpet in the world. He told reporters he was taken by how beautiful the mosque was. He said, "This is an incredible culture. Pure white marble as far as you could see." Then 47 went to the Royal Palace, where he got a hero's welcome. At this point, Trump's shaken every hand in the Mideast.
I shook more hands than any human being is capable of doing. That was a long deal, and they were big people. But they were starving for love because our country didn't give them love. They gave them a fist bump. Remember the fist bump?
Trump's wrist got so tired from shaking hands, he let Lutnick sign the deal.
Better be a good deal. That's going to be good.
The UAE is investing $1.4 trillion in America. We're building a huge AI data center in their country, and they lit up their city red, white, and blue to celebrate. But that might have been topped when the royal awarded Trump with his country's highest honor.
I am honored to announce that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan bestows the Order of Zayed upon President Trump.
Betting sites have Trump favored to win the Nobel Peace Prize. On this trip, he kind of earned it. America spent trillions trying to bring peace to the Middle East, and now Trump's making them pay us, and they love us. Today, 47 said he's getting close to making a deal with Iran. But if they don't play ball, things could get ugly. Iran's losing friends in the Middle East. Trump's making nice with the bad boys. This plan's been a decade in the making.
So 8 years ago, it was security, the destruction of ISIS, the Abraham Accords. Now, it's prosperity with these incredible deals. The two are inextricably intertwined.
Kellyanne Conway says this is peace through wealth. But the prosperity only sizzles if you're on our side.
We don't want India, for instance, continuing to buy weapons from Russia. We obviously want to end the illicit oil trade between China and Iran. We don't want Iran sending drones to Russia. There's a lot of moving parts here, but if you want stability, you need to have stronger ties with some of our partners.
The combination of trade deals and military protection makes us a great partner. India just dropped all tariffs on the United States. After Pakistan knocked down a bunch of their planes, they won't be buying Russian jets anymore. They'll be buying F-35s. If Iran and Russia don't have anybody on their side, they'll have no leverage. Trump has the keys.
Deals are all about timing. When the time is right, that's when the president is in the room with Putin. But my expectation is imminently.
What does imminently mean?
That's all you're getting.
Putin won't come to the table until Trump's on the other side. It could happen any day.
We'll be leaving tomorrow, as you know. Almost destination unknown. Because we're getting close. Could you be here? Could you be there?
But before Trump left the Middle East, he surprised our troops with special guests Lee Greenwood and Theo Vaughn.
And welcome to Hannity, and we are coming to you from beautiful Abu Dhabi, right here in the United Arab Emirates. It is currently 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 5 a.m. right here in the UAE, where President Trump capped off yet another day of his historic Middle Eastern trip. And for the third day in a row, it was a day of victories for the administration. In fact, this trip has been so productive that even former Biden officials, according to a new Axios report, they are in awe of what he has been able to accomplish. Now, President Trump began his day at a breakfast with business leaders in Qatar, where he touted the trillions in investments that he has secured and the millions of jobs that it could lead to in the United States, high-paying career jobs. Here's what he said.
We've raised trillions of dollars in investments. There's never been anything like it. And just to finish, we have a country that now has, I think, Howard, we can say that at least $10 trillion of investment and potential investment. And if the past administration did $500 billion, it was like a lot, but we did it in 2 months. I want to thank the Emir because he put up a lot, and in terms of investment, it could amount to 2 million, 3 million, maybe even 4 million jobs in the United States. And more importantly, it's really important stuff. It's tremendous refining capabilities. It's capabilities for very high-end. AI is a big subject, and it's a big subject over here, too. I always say, what are you investing in? It seems one thing everybody seems to have in common is AI. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. Maybe you shouldn't do it because too many people are doing it, or maybe you should follow the crowd, fellas, okay? So you're going to figure it out. I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the media. The media, I have to say, has been very fair. They've been very fair. They've been terrific, actually. I was watching some of our, normally they would not say good things, but they're having a hard time saying bad because this is a record tour. There's never been a tour that will raise, it could be a total of $3.5–4 trillion.
And in a few minutes, by the way, Howard Lutnick will join us, and he'll talk about AI, and he'll talk about semiconductor chips and the deal they signed here in Abu Dhabi. And after Trump's repeated warnings to Iran, according to a breaking report from NBC last night, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, they finally indicated they would be open to a nuclear deal. Now, that would, according to one Iranian official, include Iran committing to never producing nuclear weapons, getting rid of their stockpiles of highly enriched uranium. And that means also stopping all enrichment forever. And of course, international inspectors, and that must include American inspectors that will have to supervise the process in exchange for the immediate lifting of all economic sanctions on Iran. But if there was ever a trust but verify moment, this is certainly it, and a lot at stake here. But speaking this morning, President Trump issued another warning to Iran should this deal fail. Take a look.
You probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. It's very simple. It's not like I have to give you 30 pages worth of details. There's only one sentence. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step.
And reporting on that meeting, the president made those comments numerous times. Now, before departing for the UAE, President Trump delivered remarks to U.S. military personnel stationed in Qatar, highlighting the strength of our military, touting his administration's military reforms, while teasing a possible pay raise for our troops that work so hard and sacrifice so much. Take a look.
I'm thrilled to be here with the men and women who embody American strength and pride, the warriors of the United States Armed Forces. It's an amazing group of people. You are, without a doubt, the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. That's the way it is. I said it last night. I said it strong. We have the strongest military in the world. There's not even a contest. We have the best equipment. Nobody has equipment like us. Nobody has the planes or the missiles or anything else. And as your Commander-in-Chief, I'm here to say that America's military will soon be bigger, better, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. As president, my priority is to end conflicts, not start them, but I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States of America or our partners. My 2026 budget includes across the board. Maybe you don't want it. Look, for the good of the country, you don't have to take it. Pay raises for each and every one of you, substantial pay raises.
Now, before departing Qatar, the country bestowed one final honor on President Trump and performed a military flyover before he boarded Air Force One. And as it approached Abu Dhabi, the UAE followed what Saudi Arabia did and Qatar did, and they sent fighter jets to escort Air Force One right to the runway. Now, during the flight from Qatar to the UAE, the president weighed in on Vladimir Putin skipping the peace talks with Ukraine. He told reporters why. Here's what he said.
Look, nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying.
Now, upon arriving in Abu Dhabi, once again, the red carpet was rolled out for President Trump after being greeted by the president of the UAE. He participated in a full welcome ceremony to celebrate his arrival before his motorcade departed and moved through the streets of Abu Dhabi, which, just like in the previous countries he was visiting here in the Gulf states, lined with American flags, just as they were in Riyadh and Doha, and in what might have been one of the strongest showings of solidarity. The tallest building in the world was lit up tonight like the American flag. Now, during the bilateral meeting in Abu Dhabi today, the UAE's president bestowed the highest possible civilian honor on the president. And take a look at this incredible moment.
Will you give me that one?
And remember, less than 2 months ago, the UAE committed to invest $1.4 trillion in the U.S. over the next 10 years. Make no mistake, this trip was nothing short of a triumph for the country, for the president. He secured what is trillions of dollars in investments for the U.S., which will inevitably lead to millions and millions of high-paying career jobs, especially, we'll get to it later, with Howard Lutnick, semiconductor chips, artificial intelligence, and more importantly, the president outlined his vision for a brighter, more peaceful future in the Middle East. It is literally a possibility now. He has strengthened ties with these Arab nations, and perhaps more importantly, this visit signified a new world order, one in which countries in the Middle East will turn to President Trump, turn to the U.S. to counter Iranian aggression and hegemony in the region.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. It's your boy Genesis. Welcome to the show. Y'all want to keep going? You want to keep going, or you want to call it a day? You want to keep going? Gutfeld can be funny, but I really want to see something else. Okay. All right. Zelensky is telling the world that Putin is a coward for not coming to Turkey for the peace conversation. Here we go.
That this week we had a real chance to take important steps toward ending this war. If only Putin had not been afraid to come to Turkey. And I was ready for a direct meeting with Putin, whether in Ankara or in Istanbul, and not just for a meeting, but to resolve all the important issues to my mind. But he didn't agree to anything, Putin. And you can also see that the Russian delegation that came to Istanbul is of a very low level. None of them are people who actually make decisions.
The first direct peace talks in 3 years between Russia and Ukraine. They wrapped up just a short time ago in Turkey. Not in attendance, Russian President Vladimir Putin or Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky or U.S. President Trump. He says he plans on meeting with Vladimir Putin soon, and that's where real progress will be made. Let's get right to the White House. CNN's Kristen Holmes is there. Good morning.
Good morning, John. Well, that's right. This week of wheeling and dealing in the Middle East is over, and now that focus is on peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. And Donald Trump himself had been floating this idea that he might go and somehow serve as mediator between Putin and Zelensky should they both decide to go. Of course, that became more evident that he was not going to be doing that, as we saw Putin backing out of these negotiations, or at least rejecting this offer to sit in on them. So there are really low expectations from the U.S. on what's going to come out of here. But Donald Trump himself says he's holding out hope he can still have these direct conversations with Vladimir Putin. Take a listen.
I think it's time for us to just do it. I said, they all said Putin was going and Zelensky was going, and I said, if I don't go, I guarantee Putin's not going. And he didn't go, and I understand that.
When do you think you'll meet the president?
As soon as we can set it up.
He also said that maybe he would have a call with Putin. He spoke to reporters on the plane once they got on their way back to the U.S. He also said that he thought that they could solve it together, but maybe not, but at least then they would know. I mean, one thing that we know is happening here, particularly with the United States, is that they don't want the administration to in any way look like Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of them. They want to look strong in these negotiations, which of course is why Donald Trump appeared to have waited until it was clear Putin wasn't going to say that he also would not be attending those talks. John?
All right, Kristen Holmes, great to have you back on in the mornings after a very important assignment. Thank you very much. All right, with us now, Jill Doherty, our CNN contributor and former Moscow bureau chief. And Jill, I want to read you a couple very early readouts that we just got from these fairly low-level Ukrainian-Russian meetings. First, we were told that the Ukrainians only spoke to the Russians through an interpreter, which is always interesting because Russia is widely spoken in Ukraine. And the second thing here from a Ukrainian source with knowledge of the negotiations, they said the Russia delegation did not have any mandate to make important decisions. They're not ready to decide anything meaningful to end the war. Those are the latest tidbits. What's your read on them?
I'm not surprised. I mean, language is really a factor here because Ukrainians, yes, some of them speak Russian, but fewer and fewer are speaking Russian because they're speaking Ukrainian, which is a different, though related language. So it's a political statement to speak Ukrainian. And then the fact that they didn't get very far and that delegation from Russia wasn't that high up and couldn't make decisions, also very predictable because we know that almost deliberately they didn't send the foreign minister. They sent, these are competent people, but they are not very high up in the ranking. So, but I think both of those are predictable. But then you have to go back to President Trump, who basically said nothing much is going to happen in Istanbul until Vladimir Putin and I meet and talk.
Talk to me more about that and why that statement has implications not just on the meetings that just took place, but also on the broader situation here and how it's being viewed in Europe.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Right now I'm in Tallinn, Estonia, and that is one of the countries you'd have to say right on the front line with Russia. And it's a security conference, so believe me, everybody here is talking about exactly this issue. But I think, if you look at these discussions, I don't really believe that Putin, even if he meets President Trump, which probably will happen, that he will necessarily change his mind because he's not just looking at Ukraine. Ukraine is a very important issue, but I think Putin's ultimate objective is what he was talking about way back at the beginning when Russia invaded Ukraine, which is a very big picture. It's not only, Ukraine can never join NATO, it's that you push NATO out of Eastern Europe, push them out of this region and go back to like 1991. And that, of course, is never going to happen. But that literally is one of the demands of Vladimir Putin. So he's got a long-term objective. And I do believe that President Trump doesn't quite comprehend that demand that Putin is making. It's very big. He wants to literally define security in Europe, or lack of security, which it would be.
Yeah, and again, you are right now in a country that's on the front lines of this sort of rhetorical and physical resistance to Russia. What's the view from there on whether there has been a back and forth swing on how the Americans are behaving? You know, President Trump for the first time had words that were construed by some as a little bit tougher on Vladimir Putin. Even J.D. Vance did. But now President Trump is going back to saying that he wants to powwow with Putin. So is it a little bit of like a tennis match from the European perspective?
Well, I mean, it is confusing. And I think that that's probably due to both President Trump, who's been kind of back and forth, but also Vladimir Putin. You know, you kind of shake it up, get a lot of confusion in the situation, and it works for him to temporize, you know, to think, well, I can get a better deal. Let's see what happens. But I think the mood here, John, is that people obviously, since they were invaded and taken over by the Soviet Union in 1940, it's a difficult relationship with Russia. That said, if you ask what they think about President Trump, I think they're worried. They are worried that President Trump ultimately may just kind of walk away and say, look, I tried, these parties can't get it together, I'm out of here, and it's in the hands of the Europeans. So that is a concern, because even though the Europeans are rallying, and they're rallying actually quite quickly with more sanctions, giving more money. By the way, Estonia itself is going to be giving 5.4% of its GDP, which is a lot more than the United States does, to its own defense, which is for NATO. So they're very serious about it. But I do think the one phrase that I did hear over and over again was, Estonia was right. And Estonia meaning not only Estonia, but a lot of people in this region. Estonia was right in 2022 when they said that Vladimir Putin would invade Ukraine. And they
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Well, with Ukraine and Russia, they've been going at it for years. So they better get it sorted out, because it's over. It's time to get it over with, okay? Real fast. It is time to get this over with. We're not going to keep fighting this unnecessary war. Hopefully it gets sorted out as fast as possible. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you guys are the best. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. God bless you. All right, let's do this.
We begin with right now a case before the U.S. Supreme Court that has huge implications for President Trump's power and that of presidents to come. The justices are hearing arguments at the moment in a lawsuit challenging Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. That order applies to children who were born in the United States to illegal immigrant parents. The larger issue at hand is whether federal judges have unrestrained power to issue nationwide blocks on presidential actions, something that you know is happening against President Trump right now. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The president posted ahead of the arguments today. Big case today in the Supreme Court. Birthright citizenship was not meant for people taking vacations to become permanent citizens of the United States of America and bringing their families with them, all the time laughing at the quote-unquote suckers that we are. Here are some of those arguments from just moments ago.
And you are claiming that not just the Supreme Court, that both the Supreme Court and no lower court can stop an executive from universally from violating that holding, those holdings by this court.
We are not claiming that, because we're conceding that there could be an inappropriate case.
Only a class, only
by
by
a class.
Can I hear the rest of his answer?
Well, testy there. The court's decision could decide the fate of many of the president's executive orders and actions now. Federal judges have hit the president's agenda with 17 nationwide injunctions in fewer than 5 months. That's far more than any other recent presidents at this point. Former federal prosecutor Trey Gowdy.
Your view of nationwide injunctions should not ebb and flow with who is in the White House. We need one standard. It literally makes no sense that one judge who can win with 50 votes and the vice president should be able to thwart or undo an executive agenda.
Justice correspondent David Spunt is outside the U.S. Supreme Court. David.
Hi, Harris. A lot of back and forth going on in the court right now. Arguments going on for about an hour. We expect them definitely at least another hour. Always hard to cut those sound bites for TV because they are so thoughtful with the back and the forth on any case, but especially this case. Listen, as you've been mentioning to the viewers, on paper, this case is about birthright citizenship, but the forefront of the argument is about these nationwide injunctions or nationwide pauses. Let's take a live look outside the Supreme Court now, where people have been protesting the president's executive order retooling or ending birthright citizenship as it's stated in the 14th Amendment. But this is talking about those temporary orders where a judge, Harris, let's say in Portland, Maine, can issue a policy that affects someone living in Portland, Oregon. The DOJ says judges are increasingly abusing power by being able to do so. Critics are arguing the judiciary is a third co-equal branch of government, and judges have every right to issue a nationwide injunction. Right now, judges in Massachusetts, Maryland, and Washington State have put a pause on this birthright citizenship executive order, one the president signed on his first day in office. Critics say the president, without Congress, cannot simply just change the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The DOJ looking at that and subject to the jurisdiction whereof. They are hanging their hat on that point. As far as when we could get some sort of decision from the justices, we expect something in the next few weeks, unlike the end of June, because this is an application to the court. But the bottom line, whatever the justices decide, as you'll talk about with your next guest, it's going to have effects on basically all of President Trump's executive orders that are tied up in the courts. And if it's a victory for him, it may push those executive orders across the finish line in many cases. Harris?
Well, the stakes are high. David Spunt, thank you very much for watching it closely. We may come back if the news warrants. A couple of pieces now breaking down the critical case. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, when a legal split gets serious, the high court accepts the case to put things back on the level. That's the theory anyway. What happens in practice, at least lately, is that the political faction out of power challenges the government's every move in a friendly legal venue. The worry about completely ruling out universal injunctions is whether that would enable abuses of executive power. All of that a quote. Axios puts it this way. There's a good faith, non-ideological argument that courts are handing down too many injunctions. There are more than 600 district court judges in the U.S. When all of them have the power to freeze a presidential policy, lawsuits can grind the presidency to a halt more easily than ever before. Well, no doubt that's what Democrats would love at this point. Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor. So, Jonathan, let's just start before we get too big umbrella with this. Let's start with President Trump and what the road ahead could look like.
Well, this is key to his ability to carry out the promises he made during his campaign. These suits are well coordinated. The whole point here is that if you can keep all these policies in court, it won't be until 3 years into his term that he could ever hope to actually carry out some of these policies. He'd have probably less than a year to make any type of inroads. And the biggest problem facing him and his predecessors, because both Democratic and Republican presidents have objected, is that you basically have to run the table. You have to win potentially 677 to 0, because any district court judge could stop you with a national or universal injunction. And even Justice Kagan during the Biden administration objected to that and said that in that case, conservative groups are forum shopping and are basically handcuffing the administration, and that's crazy.
But isn't that, in short, pushing against a public who elected a president based on the promises to turn very specific issues around? And if you get too heavy-handed with the injunctions, like in this case, none other that we've ever seen at this point in his presidency, the high number of them, aren't you trying to negate isn't that like post-election interference, if that could even be a thing? It seems like it thwarts the voters.
Well, that's an argument being made by many critics, but inside the court, the Solicitor General is saying today that you can get a national or universal injunction, just not this way. That is, if you have a class, a group of people that are across the country that are being mistreated, you can file what's called a class action under a rule called Rule 23. And the Trump administration is saying, we're not objecting to that. We're not objecting that if you've got a national class, you can get a national order. What we're objecting to is when, small numbers of parties go into a favored district in California or New York and then bind the entire country, and most importantly, the entire executive branch.
So at the end of the day, however this goes, either the executive branch gets the power in this case, or the judiciary branch gets the power. It seems like it's that simplistic. Maybe not.
Well, you see that tension in the argument today. Yeah. This has been a pretty hot argument. Chief Justice Roberts doesn't ordinarily talk over Justice Sotomayor and said, will you please let us hear his answer? Mm-hmm. And by the way, Justice Sotomayor didn't yield. She continued to talk. She was right out of the gates very early. And clearly that was not going over well with some of the justices who wanted to hear what the Solicitor General has to say. But Justice Sotomayor was very, very active. The interesting thing so far is Justice Kagan, because she sort of painted herself in a corner in her interview at Northwestern Law School when, during the Biden administration, she said, these injunctions really are crazy. Today, she was suggesting, well, if we think this order is clearly unconstitutional, does that change the dynamic for us? So it seemed like she was trying to reframe it a bit in terms of how they would approach this.
All right. Judge is at the heart of this, too, but in a different way. Protests outside a Milwaukee, Wisconsin courtroom this morning. A county judge there has now become the defendant. And some of the crowd that you see there is upset over the judge's arrest. Others are protesting the actions of federal immigration agents, or ICE. Judge Hannah Dugan has pleaded not guilty to charges of helping an illegal alien escape federal authorities. Her attorneys filed to dismiss the case entirely. They argue she is protected by judicial immunity. Her trial is set to start in late July and expected to last about a week. Judge Dugan is facing charges of obstructing a U.S. agency and concealing an individual to prevent an arrest. The penalty includes up to 6 years in prison and fines up to $350,000. Jonathan, which way do you see this one going? And who's got the stronger argument at this point?
Well, she has a very able team, including former Solicitor General Paul Clement. And they are arguing that this should be dismissed because she has judicial immunity. Ironically, she's citing the last case involving President Trump on presidential immunity and saying, look, her motivations don't matter. She was acting as a judge. I don't see that. I don't see how you can argue that, because it raises the question, well, what else could she do? Could she have redirected or misled court staff? Could she have hidden this person in her office for a day? I mean, at what point does she stop acting as a judge? Right. In this case, the federal officers wanted to arrest him in the hallway. So it's unclear how she can claim that what she did was maintaining order in her courtroom. They were waiting until after the court was over, the session was over, and they had cooperated with her, including going to the chief judge, who, by the way, told them, of course you can arrest him in the hallway.
Look, Judge Dugan also, I mean, if you just look at it plainly here, could create a slippery slope as well. I mean, all these cases, it seems like, where these judges are doing what they want to do, they're trying to catch fire with what you said. Can you get all of the judges to agree? And if you can, maybe you can stop Trump. Your last quick thought.
Well, I think there is this widening gap between the judiciary, both state and federal, and the Trump administration. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court took the injunction case in this irregular way. This is a pretty rare occasion for them to accept an oral argument in a case like this. I think they do want to bring clarity, but if the oral argument today in the Supreme Court's any indication, there's more heat than light so far.
All right, Jonathan Turley, more heat than light.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Okay, here is the update from the OG himself, the 45th, now the 47th President of the United States, on Truth Social. Okay, so the court is not letting Trump deport people anymore. All right, here we go. It says here, the Supreme Court has just ruled that the worst murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and even those who are mentally insane who came into our country illegally are not allowed to be forced out without going through a long, protracted, and expensive legal process. One that will take possibly many years for each person, and one that will allow these people to commit many crimes before they even see the inside of a courthouse. The result of this decision will let more criminals pour into our country, doing great harm to our cherished American public. Continuing here, it says it will also encourage other criminals to illegally enter our country, wreaking havoc and bedlam wherever they go. The Supreme Court of the United States is not allowing me to do my job. Essentially, that's what he says. What I was elected to do. Sleepy Joe Biden allowed millions of criminals, alien, to come into our country without any process. But in order to get them out of our country, we have to go through a long and extended process. In any event, thank you to Justice Alito and Justice Thomas. I'm going to go down here for attempting to protect our country. This is a bad and dangerous day for America. What do you guys think about this truth the president put out? Because he's saying that Sleepy Joe allowed millions of criminal aliens to come into the country without any process. But in order to get these people out of the country, we have to go through a long and extended process. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? In my opinion, I feel like, well, I came here into this country about 9 years ago. Well, 8 years ago now. And it took me 5 years to become a United States citizen. I came into the United States legally. I was checked by Homeland Security. I had to read. I had to study. I had to know my senators in my district. I had to know all of these things, history of the United States, before I became a United States citizen. So people actually waiting in line, doing what they're supposed to do legally, are not even getting the opportunity to come into the United States. See what I mean? So it's kind of tricky, man. Well, the president is already basically not happy with all of this and is saying the Supreme Court is not letting him do what he was elected to do, which is deporter in chief to deport people that are not here legally. But how did they allow Obama deport a lot of people, but they wouldn't let Trump deport people? Dear Lord, what in the world is going on here? Oh, there we go.
Incredible. All right, so let's go first to the veracity of this issue, Jesse, of the potential. I don't know about you, but I have never once, and I've walked down the beach a lot, I have never in my life come upon a political statement on the beach made out of sea life. So I find this to be a bit too coincidental. Put up this one. There's another one on his Instagram feed as well. This one, another blue painted shell that he found in October of 2024 when he was walking down the beach. Vote Harris. And he posted this as well. And he said, Ariel understands the assignment.
Yeah,
so
he's not on the beach in San Francisco,
these are being
Martha.
constructed by James Comey with his little shells and then he takes the picture or not?
Dust the shells for Prince, Martha. I don't know if he made it or not. He obviously was trying to put a hit out on Trump, got caught, deleted it, and he's got a book out. Oh, what a coincidence. Any cop, any prosecutor knows the code for homicide. 8-6 isn't just a mafia slang, it's a military slang. 8-6, T-O, and a rotary phone. He was a Marine. He obviously knew what he was doing here. And he's not just any old FBI director, Martha. He tried to frame this guy for treason. Remember, he spied on his campaign. He got caught, got fired, leaked, and then ran away from Durham so he wouldn't have to answer any questions. He has called Trump a dangerous threat to the country who should be punished for the things he says. Now, I don't know if this guy wants attention for the book. And by the way, the book is about right-wing extremists who launch a terror attack in Manhattan, or if he wants to be arrested, because his life sucks. He's lost all his respect. No one likes him. And he's probably dying and goading the administration to put him in handcuffs because that's all he really has anymore going for him. This man has set the Democrats back again. Everybody with common sense knows what this guy meant. Just like we knew it was MS-13 on the knuckles, Jessica. Everybody knows 86-47. So the whole country sees this, and then they lie about it. And then this is the guy that weaponized the entire Justice Department against President Trump. And it just reminds everybody the lengths the Democrats will go to lie. Meanwhile, Trump, he's trying to make peace. And this guy's calling for his head. I hope the Secret Service knocks on his door at his little beach house and pays him a visit, because this can't stand. After 2 attempts on Trump's life, you can't take this lightly.
I hope they figure out if his hands were just all over those shells, painting them.
Is there sand in your fingernails, Comey? Let me see your fingernails.
Jessica Tarlov, I mean, this is strange. This is strange behavior. It's like weirdly childish, the stuff he posts. When you go back and look at the way he posts things, I mean, he's out of a job. He can live any way he wants. He's writing this book. He's been writing novels. But what do you think about the fact that he was, willing to post this thing, which is such an, and then pretend like he doesn't know what it means?
It was really stupid, but it is also First Amendment protected speech. And 86ing, I'm not as familiar with the mafia lingo, but I do know what happens in restaurants when they say like 86 the meatloaf, and that means they're out of meatloaf. I also know that if you go on Amazon, you can find tons of swag that says 8646, which I guess in Jesse's terms was about kill Joe Biden. I know on Donald Trump's Truth Social feed that I saw that video with Joe Biden hogtied in the back of a truck, which I'm pretty sure means, don't treat him with respect, that the office.
But it wasn't the FBI director who was doing that stuff.
Well, it was actually the former president of the United States and a candidate to be president of the United States again, amplifying something like that. Matt Gaetz has tweeted about 86ing. Right-wing activists have done 8646, and now they're totally outraged. But I'll cycle back. Really stupid. It's not up there, and I have 11 days before the election coming out and saying that they're reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton to be the most stupid, and that did actually cost her the election in the end in 2016. But James Comey has bothered me once again. It is leading every cycle. I wanted to come in and talk about the big, beautiful bill failing in the House Budget Committee, and now I have to talk about Comey. So mission accomplished that way, but it was just dumb.
Let's play this from Tulsi Gabbard with Jesse last night. Watch.
I believe Comey should be in jail.
I do. Any other person with a position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be, I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
So, Greg, what do you think should happen?
I don't know. I think you don't throw him in jail. You just kind of look. He went to the beach because he's all washed up. The thing I like is how the dying media is portraying this story as conservatives pounce on this. Oh my God, they're making it out into something it really isn't. You guys invented the pounce. You know, Elon Musk makes a salute. You spent a week on that, talking about how that was Hitlerian and how all Trump supporters were Nazis. The only exercise the media gets is by pouncing. So we're going to pounce a little. You guys hit the showers. The people who pounce every day on every little thing Trump has said and created hoaxes off nothing, do not lecture us on blowing things out of proportion. There's so many people whose identity is tied forever to Trump, but it's their choice. It's not like Trump spends his life thinking about this chuckle nut. This guy has Trump on the brain all the time. Trump has created a legion of people whose brains are somehow broken. And I said this, I think, yesterday. If the filter that you have to see life constantly has you waking up with disappointment and bitterness, you should probably change your filter. You know, Jesse, yes. Someone once said, holding on to a grudge is like drinking poison, hoping it kills the other person. I think it was either Nelson Mandela or Ryan Seacrest. But you see this. But you see this among never Trumpers. The first thing they do every morning is they drink the poison. You know, and by the way, I don't begrudge Democrats. I don't think Jessica's like this. Sports is, politics is a team sport. So your guy lost. You don't like the guy who won. I see these grudges more on people on the right, never Trumpers, who have so much negative emotion that it impacts the way they look at everything and their own well-being. They have to learn from, like, this guy is definitely stuck with a broken Trump brain. And when you're on the beach making little stones, you got a problem. You look at, like, Bill Maher. When Bill Maher went to visit Trump, there's one thing you knew. Both of them felt a little emotionally lighter afterwards. There's something about doing that makes you feel better. You got to let go of these crazy. I mean, I don't care. He can do whatever he wants. He can write my name in stones. I don't give a damn. But he's just ruining his own mind and his own life.
You know, Emily, there were 2 assassination attempts against the president.
Bitterness.
And, you know, stuff on social media does fire up weirdos.
It's true. It's like bitterness is sad. Okay, why are you bitter? Why? Because Kamala lost. I mean, we had Joe Biden for 4 years, or Jill Biden, if not Joe. I think Jill was the president. But why are you bitter? Why are you trying to advocate for violence? Why?
And whack jobs. And it's possible that this kind of thing from Comey could, you know, make someone want to do something terrible, because we've seen it. We've seen it happen twice already.
Of course. He's in a position of persuasion. He's in a position of authority. He was, right? He carries that title forever. I don't even like a post. I may crack up. I do not like a post if I think it would reflect poorly on the brand I represent at all times. It's so shocking to me. It's obvious that he's an odd duck. And I feel like that's where social media sort of like sucks, is when it gives everyone the voices that they're just weird. And you're like, oh, like the selfies he takes of himself. It just underscores that this wasn't, frankly, a normal person we've been dealing with, regardless of his high stature position. But look, here's the thing.
That's a great one.
I literally have like the same picture of me in like my cheerleading outfit. So I talked to my friend. He's a longtime presidential Secret Service agent, right? He was Hinckley's case officer, Jeff James. And he talked to me about that they investigate every threat. So the concept that there's somehow a question of whether this should be investigated, that's not the question. The question is whether it's actionable. And he talked to me about so many threats. You know, they show up at some guy's house in central Pennsylvania. He doesn't even have 2 nickels to rub together. He has a rusty shotgun he shoots squirrels with for dinner. But they had to investigate, and upon arriving, realized, all right, his threats are full of crap, right? An inmate at a state prison that wanted to be transferred to federal prison. That's why he was threatening the president. But the Secret Service shows up. So Jeff Comey better wait for a knock at the door, because I know my tax dollars are going to be spent wisely. And at the end of the day, they'll just realize, oh, sorry, this is just some idiot's house and it's not actionable. But final point real quick. President Trump, the amount that he has been indicted emotionally and specifically for his comments to incite others. So his comments.
And that's the thing, like Trump gets indictment. Trump gets his home raided. Trump is almost put in prison. Trump gets a mugshot. Everybody laughs at it. Everybody say, yes, you will go to prison. Liberals were so happy. Now he's the president of the United States. So you want Trump to be persecuted for his wrongdoings, but you don't want the other party to be persecuted for their wrongdoings? How does that work? As long as it's Trump, oh, yes. Because why? His father left him millions of dollars, so they hate him. He's rich, so they hate him. Poor people hate rich people. Most poor people hate rich people. So the fact that liberals hate Trump this much, just don't get it. Why? What has Trump done to you personally that you hate him this much? But you know why? Now, before I say this next statement, before I say my next statement, I'm not comparing Trump to what I'm about to say. But Jesus Christ was crucified by the Pharisees. And the Pharisees, guess what they said? The Pharisees said, how dare you be blasphemous? How dare you say you're God? How dare you heal the blind? How dare you heal the deaf? Because they wanted the deaf to remain deaf. They wanted the blind to remain blind. But here comes Jesus doing miracles. Guess what they did? They crucified him. Not knowing crucifying him was the answer. So, back to Trump. Like I said, I'm not comparing Jesus to Trump, but sort of similar to me.
We will never give up. That was considered incitement. Well, then I think this is pretty dang close.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube.
With that being said, thank you for tuning into the live show. I got to take my daughter to the bouncy house. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, and believe in Almighty God. All right? Greatness never sleeps, just like the 45th and now the 47th. God is the greatest. Never, ever stop, okay? Never give up on yourself, no matter what. Fathers, take care of your kids, okay? Fathers, take care of your kids. God bless you. Shout out to the GOAT. Shout out to the GOAT, Luke. God bless you, Luke. And God bless you, Booski, Enders. Shout out to Ellie. Dana, shout out to all our moderators that are not here, but they're here with us in spirit. Okay. God bless you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the military. Thank you to the police. Thank you to the veterans. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your service. And with that being said, God bless you. God bless America. And I believe America is the greatest nation on earth. My opinion. You can think otherwise. This is what I believe. All right. We will be back here because I want us to check out the hearing or the delegation between GOP party and the Democrat when it comes to the big, beautiful bill. That would be coming up next. Okay. I love you guys, man. Stay safe out there. Greatness.